Open Source Africa Foundation. Okay, my name is Solomon Isene, and I'll be your moderator for today. All right, so first off, let me explain to you guys what the event is all about, and from there, we'll start looking at bringing in our speakers and getting the event started properly. Okay, so this event is aimed at helping Africans to get started with the open source contributions, and we are doing this making use of the Genome Foundation.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Ayo Lua by name, and then we're sorry about what's happening now. We have we are having some network issue, so our moderator will come back as soon as possible. But while he's trying to join us back, I would like us to actually start properly. So once more, my name is Ayolua. Please, if you can hear me on the public chat, just drop an hi, and that would be very, very much good. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, thank you. So I believe people can hear me. Yeah, thank you very much. So we'll go straight. Okay, so we'll go straight to the event of the day. So like the moderator was explaining before he went off. So we want to talk about what the event is all about. So this is Gnome Onboard Africa. Okay, so this is, you could see Gnome Africa, and then you can see that the title of the event is Gnome Onboard Africa. So this event is majorly to actually bring more Africans on board to Gnome project and then to open source generally. Because we realized that very few Africans are, participating and contributing to open source projects, and then where and that is very, very in a way bad. That is not a good statistics and numbers when we count the number of Africans that are contributing to a whole lot of open source projects. And then Gnome is now looking at how can we onboard Africans, how can we bring more Africans into this thing, how can we bring them into play. So that's the whole essence of this event. And please, if you have any question, we dropped a link. We dropped a link to this on the public chat section where you can ask your question. Okay, so yeah, so we'll be moving straight to the next event, to the next item in the event, and then I'll be calling on two people who are very special. I'll be calling on Christy Progry, and then I'll be calling on Regina. Regina is a Gnome board member. She's the one leading Gnome Africa, and Christy. Okay, so she's the one leading Africa, and Christy Progry. Christy is a well-known GNOME member too, and then I'll be calling both of them, Regina, especially to actually anchor and then take over the this item, which is introduction to GNOME Africa. So they are to tell us more and well about what GNOME Africa is and why you see GNOME Africa. So if you can hear me, Regina, welcome on board. Regina, please welcome.
Hi everyone. So we're going to be presenting together. I think I have to share my video here. Um, so Christy will be joining me. Okay, hey. So hello everyone, can you hear us? Hi Christy.
Hi.
Okay. So today we're going to be talking about getting started with GNOME Africa, and we're going to be starting with introducing ourselves. I am Regina, and I'm Vice President of the Board of Directors of Gnome Foundation.
And I am Christy. I'm the Program Coordinator for the Gnome Foundation, and I've been in Gnome for now since around 2 years. And I'm so happy to be part of this online conference as well.
Okay, I think someone is complaining about the sound. I don't know. Can you hear us, please? If you can't hear us, can you say hello, hi, something before we continue? Is something wrong with our sound? Okay, great. Thank you, Samson. Okay, so when we were looking at this slide, we tried to look at a way to say welcome to everyone, as we do not know all our audience where you're coming from. So I'm just going to say the ones I can kind of pronounce. So we look at welcome in Kenya. I think it's Ujambo, and Ghana is Akwaba, and looked at in Akwa Ibom. I hope I got it right, which is Nigeria, Emedi. So I'll leave it to Christy to take the rest.
So in my language, it's Prashandetia, and welcome for everyone for the rest.
Okay. So the Gnome Foundation basically is a non-profit organization, of course, which is based in United States. It was founded on the 15th of August by two Mexicans, and they were actually university students. They just wanted to create GNOME projects using free software. So we've got a couple of questions about I want to come into GNOME, how do I start, where do I start from, and basically. So we decided to just have this in a way that is able for you to understand. And so GNOME started first from different four angles. So you can come in from either the engagement channel, which is basically user outreach, marketing, event management, and or you can come in from the code aspects, contributing to codes on GNOME technologies. You can also come into the translation if you like to translate. I think Christy said it would be nice to see African translations as well. So if you like to translate documentation into our own language, you can also come in from translations. You can also come in from documentation. It's nice that this year's season of doc, we have one African doing the documentation for GNOME. So yeah, you can also come in from documentation aspect. So generally, what we advise is when you want to come into GNOME, the first part you should look at is the Get Involved page on the Gnome Foundation website. So the Get Involved page basically takes you through processes of each of these channels. And as the talk goes on, we're going to explain how to engage with us if you have any issues with these platforms. And one of the questions that we've got to ask again is why should I contribute to open source? And this is not basically, it's not related to just GNOME alone, but it's open source project generally. We just brought out this concept to help you understand. So coming into open source is basically going to enhance your skills in a lot of ways. There are several platforms you're going to learn, so it's going to kind of tackle your learning and knowledge process. Because open source platforms, just like right now we are using the meet.gnome.org, which is a platform for GNOME. I've had to speak with a couple of people. They don't really understand this platform. So those are part of the learning curves you can get, learning new technologies and how these technologies work. And another thing is that it's going to enhance your experience generally in technology. Aside from the gains you get from working in open source, contributing to free software, you're going to have improve your job experience, and it's also going to help you grow as well in all aspects, meeting people, becoming better at your skill, or even learning new skills. Many people come into open source from maybe a place of outreach, and they are already planning events. We also want to make it clear that as much as we talked about different parts that you can come into the GNOME projects, whether through the coding aspect or through the outreach aspects. It basically depends on the aspect in your career that you intend to grow in your skills. It's an intentional part that you have to look into to decide what aspects in my career do I want to grow in. That's why we have to just circle everything around the skills set that you intend to gain. That will tilt you towards the angle in the GNOME project that you want to work with. So we have conferences in GNOME, and we've taken our time to highlight the sort of conferences before our colleague. So we have the GUADEC, and we have GNOME Asia, we have Linux App Summit, and then we have the PAX. So we have a question mark on PAX because we're supposed to have PAX early this year, but then the pandemic, made us to kind of shift the event. So that's why we do not we don't know at the moment when we're going to have PAX, and of course we're going to send emails to every attendees that intends to attend the event rather. But for the Linux App Summit, I think we're having that in November. And if you would love to join us for the event, you can let us know. We're going to send you details. And Christy is also going to be mentioning the exact date that we are going to be having that event. And if you would love to speak at the event as well, we'd love to have you. So this is basically the 4 events that we have in GNOME. So I'm going to be transferring right now to Christy to continue.
So yeah, as Regina mentioned, 3 of the events are our annual events. GUADEC is the main one. This is the largest event that we usually organize, and during all these years it has been mainly in Europe, but we are trying to go to other places as well. If the pandemic couldn't have happened, the GUADEC for this year would have been in Mexico, but we're expecting that to happen in Mexico in 2021. We still don't know for the dates, as it's pretty early, but we are expecting to have it probably by the end of June. And for the GUADEC this year happened by the end of July. So for the GNOME Asia, we had like a shift for the dates because it was meant to happen in the end of October, but together with the organizing team, we are probably planning to postpone it for the early December or for the late November. And for the last Linux Sub Summit, we're expecting that to happen on 12th of November. So in like a little bit more than 1 month. And yeah, we would really, really love to have you all there. And if you'd be interested to register or even to apply with a talk, the call for proposals are still open. The reason that I added this picture, the bus picture, is because when Guadec happens, we have a lot of, GNOME feeling in the place that we usually travel. This picture is taken when Guadec happened in Spain, in Almeria, and we had a bus and written there Guadec, and all the Guadec attendees used to go around the city with the bus and take pictures and have fun. And also the previous slide, if you could see at the Guadec picture, we had a banner in the airport where we welcomed all the participants and all the speakers there. All the conferences, it's like a place when all the staff members, our core volunteers, contributors, everyone joins there, and we have the opportunity to meet everyone in person and have a good time and enjoy the talks. We can go to the other slides. Yes, next one. Yes, this is also another picture that we had from Guadec in Thessaloniki. This was last year in Greece. We were so happy because we had also Stella Maris and another contributor from Kenya. And they also give a presentation about, here was also a presentation about the preparations and the plannings to having, events in Africa as well regarding GNOME. And here are some pictures from the GNOME Asia. The specific and the super cool thing about the event in Asia is because here is the opening with the traditional dancings, and GNOME Asia team has always the coolest swag. You can see the GNOME Asia shoes and also cool t-shirts. So it's like a place when everyone in Asia gathers there. We had also the photo booth and the swag that I mentioned. So we have like GNOME events in different places around the globe. So for example, if it's hard for you to reach Europe and if you live in Asia, for example, you can attend the event there. And here is a picture of the Linux App Summit. This event happened last year in Barcelona. It was November. We decided to choose these pictures because Linux App Summit is an event that happens in collaboration between KDE and GNOME, and we have a very diverse panel here regarding the communities because we have Alash from KDE, we have Rob McQueen from GNOME, so we have people coming from different communities presenting their ideas and having the panel and being very, very interesting, talking for different community topics as well. Where you can find us, we have our communication channel as well. Right now it's Rocket Chat. You can find us at chat.gnome.org. For the engagement channel, if you want, for example, to contribute to non-technical fields, you can just join us at the engagement channel. But if you'd like to contribute in other different fields, that, for example, with coding, when you open the Rocket Chat account, your personal account, if you click on the world icon here, you can see all the channels that are there, and you can just click whenever you want to get in and have more information. And having said this, in Rocket Chat, we have also 2 other teams that are part and are actually new teams that have started recently in GNOME. It's the University Outreach Program. This aims to create a bond between educational institutions and the GNOME community. For this specific topic, we will have a talk next Friday, I think. It will be Amit and Saloni talking. So I will leave this whole part to them to discuss more, and you can have more information. And we have the diversity and inclusion team as well. Right now it's a quiet team. We'll try to get back with more information and with more activities on that. But the important thing that I would like to mention here is that the diversity and inclusion team, we strongly encourage and empowers diversity, and would really love to have people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities to join us and to make the community as wonderful as possible. And I think that this was all that we had from our side. We'd like to thank you all for your attention.
Yes. Thank you all for listening to us. Do we have any questions, or we can just go?
All right. Thank you, Regina. Thank you, Christy. I can see your face is actually shining. Like, I've missed that face. All right. Okay. So, while we're warming up, I want to use the word actually because this month coming is so vibrant. While we're warming up for the next speaker to come and speak to us on overcoming barriers to contributing to open source. I would like to take one or two questions from anybody. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand and I will see you. So if you have a question, you can just raise your hand. I'll see you. And our moderator is back. So I would like to hand over to our moderator to pick on from here.
Okay, thank you very much, Ayo. And thank you for everyone that was patient. And also to Regina and Christy, that was a wonderful one. So as moderator has also said, I want to take questions from now. So if you have any question, you can raise up your hand or you can drop it on the Etherpad. There are some questions there already, which I'm going to read out to everyone, but there are some answers also. But I would like Chrissy and Regina to throw more light on those questions that are here. So the first question says, how do I join Genome?
Okay. Okay, like we said, joining Gnome has to come from the angle. We have a newcomers channel. There's a newcomers channel that I'm possibly going to share on the notes for everyone to see. So when you come into the newcomers channel, just say hello to everyone, introduce yourself, and let's know where you want to function, and someone will pick it up from there and add you up to the next group. Or if you're having any challenges at all, you can go into the general channel and just make an announcement. My name is this. I'm coming from this country. I would love to do a contribution, for example, in translation, and we'll take it up from there to help. What we do at Gnome is we are like a family. So it's like now Christy and I are having this presentation, but when you actually come into the channel, it might not just be Christy and I that would respond. Someone else will respond to you. What we try to say to everyone is that try and be open-minded and talk to anyone that responds to you and let them know the issues you might be having and how you want to get involved with the community. So as a community, we are aware that we function as one, and that's what we always preach. And so anybody that comes into the community and say, hey, I'm Regina and I want to contribute to translation, I'm new here, can someone guide me? Someone definitely will guide you. One of the things that we try to talk about is time zone differences. So if, for example, if you're coming into the channel at a time where most people are from other parts of the country and you don't get a response back, don't get discouraged. Please, just chat. And then you can chat us privately as well. I think one thing we did not place is our handles, Twitter, and I think it's on our page. So you can search for me or search for Christy and introduce yourself, and we would also help you. Yeah.
Okay, that was a great one. Now, there's also a question here. You've been talking about coding, the ways you can contribute. You said coding, you said translation and documentation. Now, in as much as there is design, and in the chat also, there is in the question pad, there is a link to contribute as a designer. But then someone asks, how about design? So how can this person contribute as a designer?
I think that Felipe helped with the link. Actually, we have a dedicated channel. Let's say that it's only for the design team, and part of the design team and one of the staff members of GNOME is also Caroline. Caroline is our main designer, let's say. And I'm sure that everyone that would like to contribute and to continue with the design, they can check the wiki. You can see you have also a session that says how to get involved. There is the Irc channel where you can join at irc.gnome.org. And I'm sure that you can ping there different people, and they can guide you through the guidelines and show you more information on how to actually contribute. Another way would be also to join the engagement channel. You can ping you can ping me, for example, there, or Gina or Caroline, and if you'd like to contribute, you can also get in the design team, and you can take this further, and yeah, you can continue doing that.
Yeah, another thing we do in GNOME Africa is we try to pair our designers with Caroline, to give them a guideline on how to go about the design and trademark for GNOME. So possibly, if you want to work on design, possibly maybe we have anything to do in GNOME Africa, we can always pair you with Caroline, because she has been with the foundation for for a long time, and then she understands how GNOME designs are done. So it kind of help guide you, to be able to guide others as well, because that's basically what we're planning to, to do. So yeah.
All right. Yeah, that was a great one. So if anyone is still confused, there are links on the question part, so you can just click on them and then go read about the different information there. Okay, so while we are waiting for our next speaker, which is Abubakar Siddiq Ango, I'll just try to give you guys a little breakdown about what his topic is going to be, or what he's going to be talking about. Okay, so there are so many misconceptions about contributing to open source. One major one is, I'm not experienced enough to contribute to open source and stuff like that. So in this presentation, Abubakar is going to explain to us the different ways we can contribute, even as experienced programmers or inexperienced ones, the different paths that we can take and all of that. So let's welcome Abubakar to the stage.
Awesome, thank you very much, for having me here, and I'm elated to be speaking with you. Not really spoken at so also I would like to add like 3 languages to welcome message that Florence and the team shared earlier. So I will just speak Hausa, Sanukudazwa, Arabic. Welcome by Alama presentation. Yeah, overcoming barriers to contribute. There are lots of them, and it's mostly because people. Because most of these open source projects are technical, so a lot of that it's only people that are technical that should be able to work on them. Or let me introduce myself. I will work from Kwara State, but I've lived most of my life in northern Nigeria, precise. And these days, I'm normally based in The Hague, Netherlands. As a program manager at GitLab. I do developer events that teammates make their work easier. So you can find me on Twitter 247. And I'll tell at the end. I'll tell you a funny Circuit 247, and also my website is abago.me. And now let me continue straight to contribute to open source in the first place. The first, every one of us want to be able to, which is personal fulfillment. When, for example, the joy you contributed, even if it is just an editor, a text, a produced, or by almost everyone, that fulfillment is you that I contributed. And aside that, it also into things. Okay, for example, if you are and you dug into the open source code of it, built together, you get more appreciation when you use to do things in more different ways than normal users. A lot of people have built their careers or grown their career to open source. I remember there was a time when I was actively my application to Automatic. That's the company that manages WordPress. Matt Mullenweg himself replied, and one of the things he mentioned is for me to contribute more to open source, and people can easily see what I do. And right from then, that was when I contributing to open source as a way of growing your career. First, geometrical rates about new technologies, about new language. Second, that ordinarily you just be hearing about their name, but they will reach out to you. Fulfilling what is almost all of us have this thing of if you see someone is in the developer world, they should know everything. But imagine a scenario where you are just syndrome and one maintainer just asks you to assist him, or that joy that it's me that this person is asking this thing, and so on. So the kind of relationship through a couple of things, the feedbacks they give will give you enormous career. And I want to share about one of the reasons why you should contribute to open source is recognition within the someone is speaking about something, they can be able to point out, oh, I remember so and so person. You get sent links to events that you should speak to. You get sent about this thing, or I know someone who is based in a particular within the community. And even when developments want to come in the community, have members. For example, in Africa, someone wants to come. I've met someone in probably the Gnome project who is based in Nigeria, and you get recognition within the community. Now, almost all of us get answers whenever we hear my code that I'm writing, that I'm feeling as if I'm not doing what to say I am, and so on and so forth. A lot of issues of I'm not good enough, and so on and so forth. But I'll just come on amongst all of us. But one thing we think are highly experienced or should get also with some of these things. The first one is, how technical do I need to be? Okay. Let's speak, for example, the Gnome project. Okay, you ask you to come and how can I contribute? Me that I'm still learning JavaScript, I'm still learning. As earlier, every open source project have a ton of times when you now dig in further and you check, even some of the people in the communities probably don't even have any technical knowledge of their knowledge of coordinating and organizing events, their user experience knowledge, everything comes into place. I was listening to DevOps where Bridget Crumhart was talking to some of the of the Helm project, and she mentioned that some of that they love are those ones that just made a very little correction. One of the documentation, or there was a typo, or there was anything out, and they even mentioned some people that were made maintainers just because edited just the documentation. So you don't, even if you don't even know what code looks like, you definitely hear me. Someone said I'm breaking up. If you can hear me, you can drop something in. Hello, can you hear me? Oh. Even if it's, for example, you are working on a project, time I usually use to be able to create my own personal VPN. I don't want to use the normal VPN. And I noticed it wasn't working. Then I decided, okay, what's wrong with the code? I went into it and just a single line of change was what I did to it. Code is doing, but I understood exactly why. Immediately I contributed it to the project. Okay, I think this is an issue I had. The maintainer was so appreciative, and he was saying he didn't know how he even issue in the first place. So you don't need to even know how to. That's one. Then the next thing is, yes, you don't need to be a superstar when it comes. You need basic knowledge. Okay, how do you fetch? How do you what is upstream? The master, what are branches? Okay, what is a match conflict? All these things are some key things that you need to know. Repeat in Git, you don't need to do but knowledge. Okay, I need to clone this project, I need to push this project. Now the beautiful thing, your friend, when it comes to Git. Now, the next big issue is asynchronous communication. Yeah, I think Florence was mentioning in an open source project or in a team that has we have 30 something time zones. Pressing sometimes. So, but when, and also when you have the same country, the same city with someone, almost everyone that is in that they are doing. So one of the first things that discourages people is you submit, keep refreshing, especially if it's your first time, to see has it been merged, has it this correct. You go to check it again. Did I do the right thing? This one, that one, or probably actions were performed but no feedback. You could becoming agitated enough or something. But it's part of open source itself, asynchronous, because we are not all in the same time zones. We don't work at the same time. We don't work in the same office. understand people that, okay, they will respond to this later. Give them and give people time to give you feedback. And when you want to create, or a lot of people don't know how to complain. A lot of people don't know how to complain. So when you're submitting your issue or giving information, you need to be as descriptive as possible so that the next person that is trying to or fix a problem that is occurring for you will not have to do a lot of, or they can be able to respond to you or have an issue or help you with any issue that you are having. Just turn on my webcam. Internet can be. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, please drop message. Awesome.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. My internet is kind of misbehaving for me this afternoon. Now, I'll go through the whole thing briefly again once I'm done, so that in case anyone didn't hear me clearly on some of the things I've said. Okay, now the next main issue that discourages a lot of people is how will they be taken by maintainers? Okay, this contribution I'm making, will it be accepted? How am I going to be seen? Will I be seen as someone who doesn't know what he's doing or what she's doing? How will everyone in the community even take me? Probably someone has imposter syndrome. So, but yeah, on both sides, both the side of the maintainers and experienced people in the community, a little empathy goes a long way, and a lot of community are now working in getting more inclusiveness within their communities. Then on the side of new contributors, it is important to understand that feedback will always come, and you are working with people from different cultures. There are some people that will be more political with their words. There are some people who are direct, and there are some people who can come off as being rude and something. So being able to have that empathy and understanding that you are working with different people from different parts of the world, different cultures, then understand that it's just a criticism and take it seriously and not personally. So once you understand that, okay, it's a feedback, it's criticism, the person is not attacking you personally, working with maintainers and other people within the community will become much more easier. Now, okay, I think I lost control over the slide. If you can grant me permission again. I just tried to click next, that the button is missing. Yeah, hello, can you hear me? Someone from Gnome Africa? I think I lost control over the slide. Can you grant me control over the slide? I think I lost control. I can't click next.
Hello, Abubakar. We can't hear you anymore.
Okay, I'm here. Can you hear me? I lost control over the slide. Can you grant me the access again?
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. Internet sometimes you don't have control. Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much. Now, the last one is time management. A lot of people know, even in normal life, if we don't organize, if we don't plan, if we don't organize our time, it's very difficult to manage contributing to open source, because most of us have our 9 to 5s. Okay, when are you going to contribute to open source? Is it in the evening? Is it in the weekends? It's important for us to identify, okay, how do I want to be contributing? What block of time do I have that I want to contribute? Because it will not make a lot of sense for you to not have time because of probably your schedule and your time. Then you serve as a blocker to other projects or other things that are waiting for you. And also your end, the stress will be too much if you take on a lot more responsibility that you can handle in the open source community. So it's important for you to be able to block out time or a day that will just be mainly for open source contributions. Now, these are all the points I want to mention, but let me go back and run through all the points that I've mentioned. So in case you might have missed anything during the network misbehaving and so on. Now, the first one is, how technical do you need to be to contribute to a project? One, if you really want to make technical contributions, it is important for you to look at the project. Okay, what technologies are being used? Which one do I know? And okay, which one can I learn fast? Which one has a shorter learning curve? So you don't pick something very huge, more complicated, and you get frustrated right from the beginning. But if you don't want to be a technical contributor, there are hundreds of ways to contribute, even if it is just copy editing, even if it is you doing issue triage. A lot of people don't know this, but issue triage alone is a very huge contribution to open source. There are lots of projects that have issues that have not been looked at in days or weeks or months. So going to the issue tracker or whatever technology that is being used to manage issue of a particular project and helping move those issues along is very critical to open source projects. Git is very important, but not at a very deep level. Just knowing how to clone a project, how to push a project, how to do some basic activities in Git is important. Thankfully, a lot of projects now, a lot of code hosting platforms now have web editors that you can use. GitHub is now coming up with code spaces. GitLab has web IDE. Sometimes you can make your contributions live on the website without necessarily having to clone to your system or have some complex configuration set on your system. Asynchronous communication. Understand that we are all in different time zones from different cultures, and a lot of people have their 9 to 5s, and or they might have their personal life to deal with. So communicating as descriptive as possible without any ambiguity, so that the person can read your message later and respond without a lot of back and forth. That's why most times when you're even doing your commit, it's always good to write a very good commit message so that people understand what you're doing and they don't have to ask you, what did you do here? Can you please explain this? Or you are providing feedback and they have to ask you, can you do a trace log? Can you dump this? Can you dump that? It's important to understand with people, have empathy, and be used to asynchronous communication. Then understanding that maintainers are also humans. they make mistakes, they have emotions, and so on. And a lot of communities now are working on making their projects more inclusive and be able to be accepting to a lot of developers. Even most projects now have first contribution tags or beginner tags so that you can be able to start with something simple and easier. And the people reviewing them understand that you are a new person. It is also important for you to take criticism seriously, but not personally, because a lot of people can come off online very direct. Let me use direct and not rude. Or sometimes when you have users who just come and just complain about some features they want that is not there yet. So taking those criticisms seriously, but not personally, will be a very huge thing for your self-esteem and also your mind in general. Now, the next thing is time management. To contribute to open source, you need to plan it accordingly. You need to be able to set blocks of time or days that you can be able to contribute without it affecting your personal life or without it affecting your work. Thank you very much for your time, and sorry for the network issues. I hope you've learned quite a lot of things from these, and you can definitely catch me up on Twitter and anywhere else online. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm free to answer questions. Okay, remember this.
All right, thank you very much, Abubakar, for such a wonderful talk. Now, what you've said so far, it's very, very true and clear. It happens to me a long time ago when I was trying to look into open source. I was thinking I have to be, this guru or this experienced developer to contribute to open source. But it didn't all work out that way, because what I ended up doing is just to fix some English bugs on the documentation, and from there, it all started. So you don't have to be an experienced developer to start. Gnome has different projects, different ways you can contribute, even as a starter. So just get involved, just get into the community, and then we'll take you from there and then show you how to contribute further. Okay, so while we wait for the next speaker to get ready, we would like to take questions. So if you have any questions, just go to the Etherpad, drop your question, and I'll get it across to the speaker. Thank you.
Also, if there's no questions while everybody thinks about it. Yeah, I said I'll mention the reason why my name is, my handle is Seriki247 on Twitter. During university days, I code mostly at night, and I'll come to the class to sleep. So there was a day one of the lecturer wanted to use me as an example. So he wrote my name, Abubakar Siddiq Ango, and added Sarkim Bachi. Sarkim Bachi in Arabic means, in Hausa means king of sleep, because I sleep a lot in the class. So since then, the name has followed me till date.
That is an interesting one. Very funny though. Okay, so we're about to welcome the next speaker. And so the next speaker is a Genome Foundation board director. He has been involved in the Genome community since 2009, and he has been contributing into the translation, marketing, and development. I think he has a lot of experience to guide us through into contributing to open source and also contributing to the Genome Foundations. Okay, so he's going to be talking about Google Summer of Code and Outreach and the different projects that these different organizations are involved with Genome. So let's welcome Felipe. Yes, forgive me for the names. Felipe Borges, while he takes the presenter role. Okay, yeah, let me make him a presenter. Right. Hello, Felipe, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I am just going to upload the presentation. Just a second.
Okay, sorry, I didn't get your name correctly. I apologize.
Yeah, you got
for that.
it. You got very close to it. It was pretty good. It's usually not as good.
All right.
So yeah, it's uploading.
Okay, so while the presentation is uploading, I can still take your question and send it to Abubakar. Thank you.
All right. Do you folks hear me well?
Yeah, I can see your presentation and your some face too.
All right, so I'll get started. So I have put these slides available on the internet. So if you folks want to follow it slide by slide, it's already published here. So it's this tinyurl.com/starting-with-foss. This presentation is kind of a continuation of the previous presentation, but it's I'm going to abord my experience starting contributing to GNOME and how I made this my job nowadays, and how you can do that as well thanks to programs like Google Summer of Code and Outreachy. So if you have any questions, you can also find me on the GNOME IRC. I am mostly working there, and also on email. I'm also Felipe Borges on Twitter if you would rather find me on Twitter. My story with GNOME has a lot to do with the story of these programs, because with all these programs, I totally couldn't be able to be doing what I am doing nowadays. I am originally from Brazil, and when I started contributing to GNOME, I didn't even have a computer at home. I used to go to the library in my school, and we were using Linux there because it was cheap. It was a time where there was no laws preventing computers to be sold with a specific operating system, so they used to make a cheaper operating system by putting Linux on it. So there was some point where I bought a computer in a supermarket that came with Linux, and it was our own computer at home, but we didn't have internet. And it came with Linux, so I had to click all over the place to try to learn how to use things. And I noticed that some things were not translated, that some things were in Portuguese, that is the Brazilian official language, and some things were in English. So I was researching when I used to go to the internet in the library of how I could fix that, how I could change that. And then I discovered a whole world of open source, that I could actually contribute to that software, that I could modify the software. And it was mind-blowing to me, because at the time I was definitely not a tech person. I wasn't interested on working with computers. I started using computers when I was 16 years old already, so I didn't grow up with computers. And so I started contributing translations. I would translate a lot of things with a dictionary, a paper one. I was not speaking English at the time, so I learned English by participating in the GNOME translation projects. And being part of the GNOME translation team taught me how the whole software development process works, how releases are made, how people from different teams collaborate with each other. And that got me inspired to learn how to program, how to code. And then I decided to study computer science in the university. I was very conflicted about studying other things at the time. It was the moment where I was deciding what career I would like to pursue. And GNOME definitely helped me take the softer ways of things, because I was just passionate about the idea of people from all over the world collaborating to make software that is available for free on the internet and everybody can collaborate with it. So when I went to university for computer science, I started learning how to code, and I started making some small contributions to GNOME. At the time, there was some app called GNOME Documents, that it's a PDF viewer and manager. It was starting at the time, so I made a few code contributions to it. And then I was made aware of Google Summer of Code, which is this internship program for university students to contribute in open source. I'm going to get into details about Google Summer of Code in the further slides. But so in 2012, I participated in Google Summer of Code, and it was a mind-blowing experience, because Google Summer of Code has a stipend, so it was a lot of money for my reality. We were quite poor at the time, so it really helped me to be able to buy myself my own computer to be able to work and to study in the university. And at that time, I was invited to participate in GUADEC, that was mentioned on the first presentation, which is the GNOME Users and Developers European Conference. That happens every year. It's the main GNOME event. And the Gnome Foundation still does actually, provide finance help to students to attend the conference. So I managed to go to GUADEC in La Coruña in Spain at that time, and it was my first time flying. It was my first time speaking English in front of an audience or speaking English to anybody else other than friends. And I just got so passionate about being the whole week there, talking to everybody, getting to know the heroes that I used to know from the internet. Because when I started contributing to GNOME, I used to read planet.gnome.org, that is still available. It's this tool that aggregates blog posts from GNOME people. I'm going to post here on the chat the link for Planet GNOME. And in this page, you have blog posts from various GNOME developers, foundation members. And I just started to see these folks as my heroes. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to have a career path like theirs. So I started to follow up close their personal lives, talk to them, and find out what they did, how they get there. And I found out that a lot of GNOME developers did Google Summer of Code and programs like Outreachy as well. So I decided to continue with that program. And after contributing to GNOME documents in Google Summer of Code, I became a GNOME Foundation member, and then I felt more and more that I wanted to have that for my life. And I knew from Planet GNOME that various GNOME contributors were employed to work full-time in GNOME, that they were actually paid to work on that. And that was a dream for me to be able to be paid to work on software that I use on a daily basis, that I believe on, and it's made by people who are so great. So at that time, one person that I met in Google Summer of Code was invited to work for a contracting company that was working with Endless to develop this Endless OS. Endless OS was a Debian GNOME-based operating system that it was developed targeting audiences with low internet connection, audiences mostly on the global south. So they were kind of strong in Brazil. They were interested on providing cheap computers in the market in Brazil for people who cannot afford to buy good computers, to have something that they can use for their education, entertainment, and all. So I got a contract for a whole year to work in a Brazilian company that was working with Endless. The Brazilian company is called Parafernalia. And there I was working, developing GNOME applications that are for education purposes. So I wrote a videos browser managing application that was based on YouTube. I wrote a Wikipedia client with them that would allow them to browse Wikipedia online, because one of the deployments they had was about putting a computer in a Native American tribe in Guatemala, I believe. And there they would be able to consult Wikipedia and read about a lot of things without internet access. So it was really like changing the reality of a lot of people working on that. So it was something that added up to my passion a lot. And after that contract was done, I got invited by the Red Hat to work on the desktop team. Red Hat is one of the biggest players in open source software, and Red Hat has a whole desktop team with dozens of developers who work full-time in GNOME. So I was invited to join the desktop team. And for that, I had to move here to the Czech Republic. So I no longer live in Brazil. It's been 5 years since I live here. And I'm very lucky to work in GNOME full-time. So I maintain currently GNOME boxes. I also contribute to GNOME Control Center, which is the settings in GNOME. So if you manage printers, create new users, you probably have been using my code here and there. I contribute to various other efforts like Fedora Silverblue, Flatpak. So working for Red Hat empowered me to do these things and also be part of the GNOME project in an administrative way, participate on the community as being a board member, participate on the various teams and committees. I'm also part of the Code of Conduct team that is going to have a presentation today. You shouldn't miss it. And yeah, this was something that it was only possible because of programs like Google Summer of Code and Outreachy that enabled me to do this professionally. So I saw this on the Outreach website that there's this statistic that 86% of tech professionals say that open source advanced their careers, because open source is something that it's a proven record of your contributions, right? Somebody can put your name on Google and find you out. And that's exactly how Red Hat approached me. When I finished my contract with Endless, I wasn't looking for a new job. I actually wanted to continue with Endless, but Red Hat was familiar with my contributions to GNOME, and they offered me to move here and to do these things professionally. So my open source contributions got me the job. And this is much better than having a CV where you are describing on your resume the things you have done for proprietary companies, but you can actually not show the code because this is copyright that belongs to somebody else. So open source allows you to have your name after the code you wrote available in a Google search away. So this really empowers you on the job market. Also helped me to find mentors. I learned from a lot of experienced developers. I'm still learning a lot from very experienced developers. We are very lucky in the GNOME project to have people who are pushing technology forward. A lot of things have been invented in the GNOME community. Like GNOME developers have invented technologies that are now used by millions of people in the cloud business, on the container business. So there are various technologies that were started in GNOME. So GNOME is also this inception of technologies that start on the desktop and that they just take over the world. Now the CEO of GitHub was a GNOME Foundation member and contributor in the past. There are people in Microsoft, Google, Amazon. There are great GNOME people working in various places in the industry and pushing technology forward, thanks to this expertise and thanks to being part of this community that actually helps everybody else grow together. So it's very important. It was very important to me to be able to network, to get to know developers from other realities, from other countries, and get to work together with them. The demonstration and collaboration skills is also a very important topic, that you need to collaborate with people from all over the world. You need to be able to understand that there are different stakeholders in the project. The GNOME project, it's not itself targeting distributed to end users. The end users consume GNOME throughout the other operating systems like Ubuntu, Fedora, Debian. So being able to understand that in some discussions there are different stakeholders, that some people have different perspectives on it, that some people want to make some certain changes because they have a different vision for the project, and be able to reach consensus and discuss these things together is also a demonstration of collaboration skills that is very important in a software engineering project, because we know that not a single person can develop things alone, and you definitely need to collaborate with others. So being good at collaboration is something you learn a lot from open source software. So getting on the details about the programs itself, I'll start with Google Summer of Code, and then there will be another slide where I'll talk about Outreach. Google Summer of Code is a Google program that pays people to work during 3 months to contribute to open source projects. Not just GNOME, but there are various other projects, like Mozilla has projects over there, KDE, Fedora, the Linux kernel, QEMU. So there are various open source communities that have internship projects available for Google Summer of Code. It happens once a year, usually around May to August, if I'm not mistaken, but it's 3 months long. And it pays $5,000, I think, for United States people, and then it gets adjusted based on the Big Mac index to other countries. So everybody kind of gets something around 5,000. This is very important because a lot of us cannot afford to contribute to open source software if we are not getting paid, because some of us have to provide for our families, need to put food on the table, and this money allows you to actually focus full-time on working on it. And Google Summer of Code is a full-time program, so you should expect that by enrolling in Google Summer of Code, you're going to be working daily on your project. The eligibility, you need to be a university student. I remember that when I was a student, they requested me to have a proof of enrollment with the university, so I could ask my university to provide a document proving that I am studying. That doesn't necessarily need to be computer science or anything related to technology, but it needs to be a university level degree. And you also need to be over 18 years old to participate. The way the program works is that you write a proposal to work on a feature. Usually communities are going to have pages where they show features that they might be interested on. and you send this proposal to work during 3 months on implementing that. They're going to assign you a mentor. A mentor is usually a person from the community which is experienced. I've been mentoring now in Google Summer of Code and Outreach. So you can see a lot of us that became students, then got involved in the project and now are mentoring the next generation. And this is happening on and on in GNOME. My mentor when I was a student was also a student. And you can see various developers in the GNOME project like Florian Miller, Carlos Garnacho, Bedad, various important GNOME developers have been Google Summer of Code students. The next Google Summer of Code is probably next year. This year, we just ended now in August this round, and is 1 round per year, so probably next year, which means that you have a lot of time to prepare. In the GNOME project, we expect that contributors are going to have a few contributions in GNOME to prove that they're going to be able to deliver what we are agreeing on. So if you can start contributing to GNOME now, it might be a good idea for applying for Google Summer of Code in the future. The proposals is pretty much just about showing your previous contributions and convincing us that you're going to be able to deliver the project. And Google Summer of Code has these evaluations. There's a midterm evaluation in the middle of the program where both students and mentors evaluate their progress. And then the students receive the first slice of their stipend. And then there's a final evaluation in the very end where the projects are done and the students get to evaluate their mentors and vice versa. And we decide who passes and who doesn't pass the program. So you get a certificate and a final payment. There's also a community-bound period at the very beginning where you learn how to get involved in the community, because since you're going to have to collaborate with this community, it's important that you get to know the people, that you chat on a daily basis, that you participate on the community. So there's here a link on my slides for more information about Google Summer of Code if you are interested on reading about it. Also, feel free to ask all of us GNOME members anywhere in our channels about the program. We are happy to help. I am now also one of the administrators of GNOME in the Google Summer of Code program, so I usually talk a lot to the interns when they got selected. I organize their presentations during GUADEC, so interns are invited to go to GUADEC and to speak about their projects in GUADEC. Let's get to Outreach. Outreach, it's a program that was inspired in Google Summer of Code, but it was mostly focused on minorities and groups that are underrepresented in tech. It's interesting about the history of Outreach that it started in GNOME. We created in GNOME the GNOME Outreach program for women, and it had a few interns in the past, and then Outreach got so much interest from the other open source communities that it became its own organization. Nowadays, there are various other organizations working in Outreach. You should check the outreach.org website for eligibility. What is interesting about Outreach is that you don't necessarily need to be coding. So Outreach accepts testing, docs, design, marketing. There are various projects for various organizations, also coding, of course. And also there are some Outreach chats on Twitter. So you can follow the @Outreach account on Twitter and ask questions over there. That oftentimes there's this chat about answering questions that people might have about the program. Another great thing about Outreach is that it happens twice a year. So people from the Global South, they usually don't have vacations during the middle of the year, during June, July, are able to work on from December to March. This was very useful. This is very useful for people from Brazil, for instance, because in Brazil we have summer vacations in the end of the year, not in the middle of the year when it's the winter. So Outreach is much more inclusive on this regard. And Outreach pays $5,500, which is also a pretty good stipend. One thing I want to convey about these programs is that the feature you're going to be working on, the contribution you're going to be making, it's very important, of course, but the most important thing to us is onboarding you in the community. This is a way for us to give opportunity for people to get paid, to experiment participating in the community and trying to find professional ways to continue collaborating with us or continue collaborating in their free time. But it's a way for us to build the next generation of developers in our community. So these programs are very important for us in a community for our internal growth, for us to build the next generation that's going to keep pulling GNOME forward, right? Pushing GNOME forward. So since I mentioned that both programs require, in GNOME, we require that students applying for both programs, they need to have made already a contribution. So you need to have a proven record that you are capable of using basic version control system and processes and all. So you can make already your first contribution to Gnome. You can go to the Newcomers guide. I'm going to be posting here the link in the chat, but it's wiki.gnome.org/newcomers. And there we have a step-by-step process teaching people how to contribute code to Gnome, how to choose a project you want to contribute, how to compile that project, because you also want to be running the latest version of that application to be able to contribute to it, because when applications are released, they are released on a stable version, and then a development process starts, and it usually takes 6 months for an application to be delivered. So oftentimes a bug you see in a stable application has been fixed already on the development module and is going to be ready in the next release. So the Newcomers Guide teaches you how to choose a project, how to build it, how to solve a task, how to submit. We oftentimes do Newcomers Workshop. You can find on YouTube if you search for Gnome Newcomers Workshop, where me and my colleagues are teaching people how to make a patch contributing to Gnome, how to download the project, how to build everything. It's also important for you to participate on the community from a cultural point of view. Being involved with the folks and understanding how things are made, how things are discussed is very important. So joining the chat with the developers is also very nice and important. And be patient. It takes a long time for your contributions to go through, for you to understand how the project works, for you to understand how to get around all the complexities of developing an operating system. But as I said, we are developing an operating system. We are developing a whole experience on the desktop. So things are hard. So expect that you're going to be able to contribute in various ways. There are very easy tasks to contribute. There are tasks in GNOME that are marked for newcomers. So if you go to the GNOME GitLab, you're going to find a lot of issues that are like easy and they are left only for new contributors to do it. So the experienced developers don't touch those. But yeah, we need to be patient to understand that we are releasing a complex code base, and some things take a while to be accepted, to change. And this is just the essence of developing complex systems, right? What we do, systems engineering, is this work with complex systems. But I'm pretty sure that everybody can find something that they're passionate about in GNOME. Either you're contributing to documentation, design, marketing, or code. You might have your favorite app, or you might have your own app that you invented, or you might contribute fixing some bugs on GNOME. There are various ways you can contribute and find something that actually motivates you, because I think that you are only able to continue engaged in the long term if you are actually passionate about it. So yes. Another thing I wanted to mention is about the after internship, because after you got paid and you work during the internship and you get approved and everybody's happy about it, what do you do about it? Some people can afford to continue contributing on their free time while they're continuing with their studies, but a lot of us couldn't. And we have this expression that volunteer time is not fungible, which means that you cannot force volunteers to work on things that they don't want to work, or that they're not get paid to work. So what we encourage people is to become a GNOME Foundation member, which is continue contributing to GNOME, and use your GNOME portfolio to get positions in the job market. There are various companies. I mentioned that I work for Red Hat, but there are also contracting companies like Collabora, Igalia. There are various other companies that do peripheral things to GNOME, so they don't necessarily develop GNOME, but they develop technologies that either started on GNOME or are technologies that are used in GNOME. So there are companies paying for GStreamer work. A lot of the GStreamer is this framework for audio and multimedia manipulation. So there are a lot of companies developing entertainment system for cars, and they are hiring GNOME developers because of that, because of their expertise in GStreamer. So that there is a job market, and this relationship you build with your mentor, with the broader community, is going to definitely help you get better job positions. So after the internship, it's very interesting to find ways for you to fund your future in the project, because staying in the project brings a lot of positive things in your career. I have a career where I work every day working on GNOME, and yeah, it's a blessing. I really am happy to be able to do this, and I cannot imagine myself doing anything else. So that's what I wanted to address today, teaching about GSOC and outreach. And later on today, I'm going to be doing some presentation with a bit of live coding about how to develop GTK applications. So you can learn how to create your own applications and how most of the GNOME applications are written. So you get familiar a bit with the code. So if you're into code, it might be a good one to watch. So I guess now I can be taking some questions. Let me see the Etherpad. There is no new questions there. Anybody has questions in the chat? Thank you.
Yeah, that was very awesome, Felipe.
Thank you.
Okay, so if anyone has a question, just drop it on the chat or the question part. I'll get it across to him.
Okay, thank you, Felipe. All right, so we'll be moving on to the next person, which is Melissa Wu. And Melissa Wu will be actually taking us through a very interesting moment. I am new to GNOME. Uh, you know, remember what it's like. Okay, she's gonna talk with us what it's like to be new to GNOME, and okay, so please, if you have question, please just drop your question while we are, bringing Melissa to present to us. Okay. Okay, Melissa, I'm sorry, I can't seem to find you on the list. Please, can you just give me a response to know you are the one, Melissa? Okay, okay. All right. I don't think Melissa is available, so we're going on a short break. We're going on a short break, and I will be handing over back to the moderator, and he will be taking us on a short break. While we're going on the short break, please, if you have any question at all, you could drop on the Etherpad or drop on the public chat, please. So I'll be handing over to the moderator. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ayo.
Hold on a bit. Ayo, there are questions for Felipe. You have to actually scroll up. Somebody asked, when is the next Google Summer of Code? That was one. Another person asked, okay, I think that is the only question. Okay, as another person asked, if I want to start contributing to GNOME today, how do I go about it? Those are the questions for Felipe. Please, next time, just use the Etherpad. Just send in your questions through the Etherpad. It will be easier for us to actually check it and actually ask the speaker. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, all right. So please, Felipe, you can come back and just throw more light on the questions that is asked on the public chat. Okay, so someone said he has answered them already. Just check the public chat now. Okay, so if there's no other question, I would like to go on a short break for now. Maybe 20 come back. And when we're back, we'll have an interesting talk again from Molly and Rosanna. They're going to be talking about creating considerate communities with code of conduct. So you don't want to miss that talk. So let's just go for a short little break and then we'll be back. Thank you. Okay, guys, sorry for that. The break is for 5 minutes. It's not 20 minutes because we are recording it. Okay, so this time you can just take it out to connect with people here. Just chat with anybody you feel like you want to chat with. Ask your question personally and get to connect and network with other persons here. Thank you very much. Okay, everyone, welcome back to the event. I hope you guys connected with a lot of persons. And one interesting thing about events like this is the networking part of it. So I want you guys to connect with each other, get to know each other better, and get to know what the other person does and how it can help you in your career and stuff like that. Okay, so without wasting much time, we are going to welcome the next speaker, and then we are going to have them talk about, sorry, let me get that. We are going to have them talk about creating considerate communities with codes of conduct. Okay, so we're welcoming Molly and Rosanna while they give us their presentation. Thank you very much.
Hi, we're dealing with some technical discussions right now. Think I need like 5 minutes.
Okay, so Molly, you have your 5 minutes. While she's getting ready, the connecting should also go on. You can chat with anyone you want to get to know each other better. So please, if Rosanna is here, you can say hi so that we get to know you. Not heard from you.
Hi, moderator, please, we might need 5 minutes more break. Um, um, I need to talk with Felipe. Felipe, please, can you check your private chat? I'm trying to get to you now, please.
All right, so we still have 5 minutes more. Um, Molly, are you ready now?
Moderator, please hold on. We're working out something with Molly. 1 minute. We are trying to work on the time zones issue we're having right now. So just give us 3 minutes, please.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I noticed somebody was playing some good sounds before when we started. Can I get that for these 5 minutes? Okay, guys. Since we are still having the time zone issues, I would love to call back Felipe to talk to us more about contributing to these different open source platforms, like also getting into Google Summer of Code, tell us more about it, and also outreach it and give us more information about it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm back. I was under the impression that Regina wanted me to continue with my next presentation instead of talking about the previous one. Is that it?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so I hope you are not getting bored at seeing me. Let me share my webcam again.
Not exactly. We are very excited to get to discuss with you, and this is a pretty nice topic. I can't wait to learn a lot from you.
All right, so this talk is a format where I'm going to be talking a little bit about GTK and about some basic concepts behind it. But then I just want to jump directly into writing a simple application in GTK, and you can see my screen shared, and so we can get to discuss the topics in a practical way. In the past, I used to do more slide-based presentations about developing applications, but code on the slide, I don't think it's something that scales very well. So let's do some hands-on and let's take the risk of having bugs on a live presentation, right? Because usually that's what happens. So here are the links for my slides. So if you want to follow the presentation as well, I'm going to be posting them on the chat after the presentation, so no worries about it. So right, yeah, you don't need an introduction. You saw my presentation 10 minutes ago. So GTK, the GIMP toolkit, right? In the beginning, there was this tool called GIMP, and it is an image manipulation program by the GNU project. And the toolkit, the graphic widgets that they use to create that application, has outgrown the project to the point where the whole GNOME desktop has been built on top of it. And this is not a historical talk. There's a very nice history of GNOME video that is a presentation from a previous GUADEC that you can find on YouTube. I also will be posting the link on the chat for those who want to follow up. But yeah, this is not a history project. This is more about a practicality one, like how to write an application in GTK. So who is using GTK, right? Why would you learn this new technology? Why would you learn this stack? So the GNOME desktop is developing based on GTK, so the GNOME applications are, and it's available in all the distributions that ship GNOME: Fedora, RHEL, Ubuntu, SUSE, Debian. So everybody who is using these distributions is somehow using a GTK application, is using our code. Also, if you're using Firefox or Chrome on Linux, the windows are also drawn using GTK, so they look native, they look compatible with the rest of consistent with the rest of your desktop. We know of Konami, the video game maker company, that they also use GTK for some embedded devices, but since they do something less connected to desktop Linux, we're not very aware of why they do it, but we already spoke to various Konami developers in conferences about their use of GTK. Also, there is .NET, the IDE, like the development integrated development environment that Microsoft has with Mono and Xamarin that allows you to create GTK applications and ship them in multi-platforms using .NET. So it's pretty cool. And there is also Steam, Valve. If you're playing games on Linux, you see that the dialogues are also native. They look very compatible with the rest of the desktop. But talk is cheap. Let's continue. So the key concepts of GTK is the widgets, so the objects on the interface, the containers, which are also widgets, but they are able to contain other widgets, and then the constraints, the mathematics involved in allocating space between the widgets and all. GTK is an event-based toolkit in the sense that you need to code thinking of what happens when a person clicks a button. Then you need to connect it to a callback to have a reaction to that event. So this is something that is going to be much more evident with the practical example. G-Object is this C implementation of object-oriented programming. So you can write object-oriented programming applications and libraries using C, which is not an object-oriented programming language. And GTK uses G-Object and various other peripheral libraries. Let's say we are going to have an overview of the platform, so that is going to be clear. But the idea of using C is because we can get closest to the low level of the computer and have maximum performance. It also comes with some problems because of that, some extra complexity because of that. But then we also have G-Object introspection that allows us to, in a simple way to put it, it allows you to call C programs, parts of C programs, functions, methods in other programming languages. So this allows you to write a GTK application in Python, a GTK application in JavaScript, or various other languages, and the libraries are C libraries. So you have the toolkit, and this toolkit is available in various languages, and which is pretty cool. And GTK has this concept of single thread, so you're also going to see from the events that you somehow have multi-threading, but they all have to somehow converge to a single thread. So here, language binding, so languages that you can write GTK applications on. I am sure that there are a few other ones, but these ones are the most popular ones, I think, from the top of my head. Today, I'm going to be doing the examples in Python, so we don't need to be writing too much code to see the results. But all of the examples I'm going to do today, you can also do with these other programming languages. Various Gnome's applications are actually written in Python as well, like Gnome Music. Some are written in C. In JavaScript, there's the GJS, which is the Gnome JavaScript, and there are some very nice applications like parts of the Gnome shell is written in JavaScript, the Gnome extensions, Gnome documents. Vala Gnome Boxes, the application that I work on, this virtualization client application, is written in Vala. And now there's Rust coming over, and it's being popular because the bindings are becoming much more easy to work with, and Rust has a lot of advantages over C. So there are a few applications in Rust. You see the Gnome Tour application, the first one you see on the new version of Gnome that teaches you about the features in Gnome and whatnot, is written in Rust. We also have a matrix chat application called Fractal that is also written in Rust. So this is also a way for you to see that if you have expertise in an existing programming language, you can probably transfer your expertise to our stack and trying to contribute there. The Gnome APIs are in C, so you kind of have to look at the C documentation if you want to have a deep dive of how things are implemented under the hood. So here I just put this prefix as NAK, so you can see how object-oriented programming concepts get translated into C. So how we have the prefix of the G dash for things, and then we have the name of the object, and then we have the methods, and how this can easily be serialized or can transferred to concepts in other programming languages. Jtk also uses heavily of inheritance, so one object inheriting characteristics from another one. So everything starts with this very elementary G object that is the implementation of an object in C, and then you have the Jtk widget that is a very elementary widget, and then you have containers that are widgets that can contain other widgets. Jtk bin is a type of GTK container that can contain one item. And then there's GTK button, which is a type of GTK bin that can contain multiple items and can manage its constraints about size, allocation, and packing. So you can see that a lot of times things are going to be very simplified because not every widget needs to implement every single concept and all. So this is a concept from object-oriented programming that we use and benefit from in GTK. Advantages: the language, being language agnostic, being able to write GTK applications in various languages is a great advantage, because we can focus on using the right tool to solve the right problem. This is a lesson you probably are going to conclude by yourself the more you work in programming, that you should use the right tool for the right thing, that there is not such a thing as one tool solves it all, and not every single nail can be hammered with the same hammer, right? So there is stability because C has a good performance, and it's free and open source software. So the cons of using GTK is that we don't have a good multi-platform story. There are some GTK applications in Windows, in macOS, but they are not as well supported as the Linux counterparts. So we are still yet to make a big progress on the multi-platform story. I think that we are progressing very well on that, but we are still not the best toolkit. So if you would be willing to write an application that needs to be in various platforms, I wouldn't necessarily advise you to use GTK. I know of Qt that is used by KDE that has a bare multi-platform story so far. Yeah, our documentation is still ever growing, and this is also a way you can contribute. You can also contribute to improving the GTK documentation. We are going to have this year on the Google Season of Docs a person working during the internship in the GTK documentation, the GNOME developing documentations in general, I believe. So I hope we can improve our documentation, and also with GTK 4 coming, we are probably going to spend a lot of time documenting things better. So the downsides of GTK might be going away at some point. So if you want to develop desktop applications which have a reasonable amount of to run in a reasonable performing device, so not something very lightweight for embedded devices, but there are GNOME applications deployed in kiosks, for instance. So you can have machines where people are buying tickets, or where you have the timetable for transportation systems that are written based on GTK. There are various companies doing business out of writing little applications in GTK here and there. So this is also an interesting thing to learn if you are interested in developing desktop applications. Tooling. GTK actually has pretty good tooling nowadays. Gnome Builder is the IDE that I'm going to use on the examples later on, and it's a complete development environment that is integrated with Flatpak and with toolbox containers, and it's specialized on writing GNOME applications. So you have a few extensions that can help you perform better while you're coding. It's very nice, and it's continue being developed, so it just tends to improve. There's also the GTK inspector that I plan to show that allows you to interactively interact with GNOME applications. We also have Dev Help, which is an application that allows you to read your documentation locally, so you don't need to necessarily browse the documentation on the internet. We have the human interface guidelines. So this is GNOME documentation showing how GNOME applications should look like from a user interface and user experience point of view. So this is very nice to get the concepts of how GNOME applications look like, how GTK applications can look better by following certain guidelines, not just in terms of aesthetics, but also in terms of accessibility and performance. And also Glade, that allows you to build up interfaces graphically by dragging and dropping and clicking buttons around, and you can build front end for applications that you can just plug to your code. So here is an overview of the stack. glib is in the very low level and implements very basic, elementary, I would say, concepts that are reused on top of the stack. So you have objects for manipulating date time, for reading files, for manipulating strings, and then you start going up and you have GIO that can do file management with networking involved, and these things can be abstracted. So GTK is built on top of this, and this is one of the great aspects of free and open source software, that things are built on top of each other, and we are able to be always constructive and no need to reinvent the wheel all the time. by having your own implementation of everything. And as an application developer, you can be picking the best of each one of them and compose your application without having to do a lot of things. A lot of people are going to complain about C and insecurity and all. But the reason it was chosen, it need to be taken into a context of the time it was chosen, and also the advantages of it, that it's very flexible, it's very popular. The Linux kernel is written in C, so you are able to talk directly to various elementary libraries on your operating system because of C. The compatibility is there. So I don't see this changing much for a library point of view, but there is already a lot of discussions about rewriting some applications in Rust. I know Federico has been working on librsvg that renders images in GNOME to port it to Rust, and he has already made a release out of it. So things are moving there. And so if you have some traumas from university from C, or you find C to be very hard to learn, it's not necessarily going to be always like that. And as I said, the applications you build on top of it can be available in various other languages. But if you want to actually contribute to GTK itself, so improve the toolkit, to improve glib, to improve GIO, to improve these components that build GNOME applications, you might have to dive into C. So that's that. I will probably skip this slide because it's about signals and event handling, and we have examples of that on the application that I'm going to be showing you. So it's basically that GNOME has, GTK has signals in the sense that you can connect to events emitted by a widget. So when a button gets clicked, you can emit the clicked signal, and then there's a whole hierarchy of widget propagation. So one widget contains another one. Our toolkit is based on containers. So it's one window that contains a content area that contains another widget and so on. So there's a whole system of propagation of signals from the widgets that emitted the signal all the way up to whoever is going to handle that signal. So this is something very nice to develop applications in a very manageable way, in a very modular way. So here I have some link for some resources. The GTK and the Human Interface Guidelines and various other guides are available on developer.gnome.org. So there you can find various other guides about developing GNOME. And here I have a link to the Python GTK docs that we're going to be using on the examples now. So if you want to, if you are a Python person or if you want to follow along, that's something nice to check. And then we have the IRC channels where we have the newcomers one, where we usually help people starting contributing, and then the GTK one when it's more specific things to the toolkit itself. So if you want to get to know a detail about implementation or discuss why something is the way it is with the GTK developers, you can find them there on the irc.gnome.org server on IRC. So just a second for me to set up here my environment to start sharing my screen. So this demo time. I hope screen sharing works. Yeah, so you should be seeing my screen now. So I'm gonna go to another workspace, and I'm going to use Gnome Builder to write a simple application, and we're going to be discussing these topics and the development model while we do it. I know it's very risky to do a live coding session, but why not? So I am going to be creating a web browser and show you how it's very easy to create a web browser using GTK and WebKit. And also the application ID, let's not get too much into the details, because the thing is that you need to be able to somehow learn when is the right time to deep dive into a concept and to abstract and accept that it is the way it is and focus on getting your things done, right? So the application ID has this reverse DNS notation, so it's like org.gnome in case of a GNOME application, but you would probably have your own domain for your own applications. But I'm gonna call it org.gnome browser because it's a web browser and it's in Python. The license here you can pick. The whole thing about this is that Builder is going to create a boilerplate, like a basic template of how a Python project should look like. So we don't need to worry about setting up the beginning of the project, like the build system or the very elementary parts of your application. We can focus on actually developing the real functionality. So now I created an application with Builder. You can see here the files of this application, and I'm just going to modify the build system to build against the latest GNOME, so we have a modern way. So this is a Flatpak application. So your application is already building in a Flatpak container. It can already be distributed this way. So Builder, it's really handy in the sense that allows you to just focus on getting things done and not focusing on the bureaucratic part of development, which is bootstrapping the application. I'm just going to go up and check a little bit in the chat if there's any issues. So are you folks able to see my screen sharing?
Yes, we can see your screen, yes.
And you see GNOME Builder here, like with the code?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
yes.
Great. Okay, hopefully I wasn't talking to myself. Okay, so the application is done, and Builder has this button here in the top, I hope you can see, that is also can be triggered by Ctrl F5. So I'm going just to press play here, and it's going to build in a Flatpak, the application, a Flatpak container is just going to launch it. So now we have a Hello World application. It's just a basic GTK window.
Hello, Felipe. Someone is saying that I am only seeing the demo time on the chat. I don't know if everyone is saying that.
Yeah, I don't know about that because I can see my screen on the. Oh, okay. So some people see the code, so it might be a specific issue with somebody.
So let's ask, what is the device the person is using? Is the person using a laptop or a mobile phone?
Yeah. So yeah, I hope this is going to be recorded, so later on the person who's not able to see the code can catch up, I guess. So I will continue. So now we just have this little application with the window and the hello world, and we're going to start modifying it to turn into a web browser because we're developing here a web browser. Builder has this search bar here in the top where I get to open the file. So I'm going to open the main window file. There's two files, a window.py, which is the logic of the program, and a window.ui, that is describing the interface. The separation between interface and code is very important to allow designers to work on the interface without having to touch the code, and also for you to be able to separate the logic of graphic things and the logic of the program, the controller logic of your application itself. So if I open the Python example here, I'm gonna raise the font. You see the GNOME Builder already created a file with the license on top and gets my name there and all. Here you have Python importing GTK. And here we have this annotation, this GTK template annotation that points to a resource path. This is that other file that I mentioned, the one that describes the interface. So this annotation pretty much means that this class, this browser window class, is going to have a template mapped to it that is described on this window.ui file. So here we are initializing the template, and here we have a label. So I'm going to probably open both files side by side so we can see how they connect, how they interact. So Builder also allows me to put files side by side like this. So let me reduce the font here. Yes. So now you see here that we have a label and a GTK template child, which means that we are mapping this label object to a label defined on the window.ui file. So this is mapped to this object here. There's the label ID. So if I change here to Hello Gnome Africa, and then I hit the play button, I should see the application modified. So it's that simple. And this is an XML notation that is very easy for people who are experienced with HTML, I guess. So let's continue here. What I'm going to do to create a web browser is firstly I'm going to add the web view. In a normal typical browser, you have this big part where the websites appears. This is the web engine. It's what renders the HTML of the pages and shows you the visual result of it. So I'm going to add a GTK box and I'm gonna call it content area. And this is exactly what is going to contain this web view. So I'm going to remove these aspects that are related to the label, and I'm just going to keep the box. So here we have a GTK box of name content area that is going to be used in our Python program. So let's get here to the Python program on the left and rename this to content area. All right, so now we have a box. Our application no longer has the hello world. I'm going to run it again so we can see if things are working. Yes, so it's an empty space here. So now let's get a browser engine there. WebKit is the browser engine that GNOME applications use. If you use GNOME Web, the GNOME browser, you're going to see it. And Safari in macOS also uses WebKit to render pages. I think Chrome was using it at some point. I'm not entirely sure if they're still using it. So here you see the GNOME Builder can already complete the name of the library. So that's pretty neat. So let's code. I'm going to create an object called WebView. That is a WebKit WebView object. And then I'm going to get our content area object there on the top to pack that, to add that the web view. So here I'm using the GTK object pack start. Content area is a GTK box. So let me show you the Python documentation about GTK box. So if I go to GTK box here, you can see the properties, the widget hierarchy, the methods. So we are using this pack start one to add the web view into our box. So here you can see that the first parameter it gets is the child widget. The first one is whether the child widget should expand the box that contains it, whether it should fill the content of it. And here's a padding, a distance to the widgets surrounding it. So I will add the web view to the content area. I'm going to allow it to expand. I'm allowing it to fill the space, and I'm going to let a 0 padding. That's it. Next, I'm going to tell the web view to load a page. Let's get to the documentation of WebKit here in the browser. So WebKit web view. Nice. So here we have the very same equivalent page for the WebKit. You see the hierarchy for the web view and all. So we want to find out how to load. So I think there is a method called load URI. That's it. A lot of programming is about searching in pages, searching in Google. Don't expect that you one day will remember everything, because that's really not the point. So don't worry about memorizing things. Worry about how to get around, like how to get your ideas and how to solve one problem at a time, how to make it in an incremental way, and don't need to focus much on memorizing things. So load URI receives a string, which is the URL that actually we are rendering. So I'm going to open the GNOME website. I'm going to tell all those widgets to show all, to present themselves, because the widgets, they have this property called visibility. Here you can see on the right side on the GTK box that there's a visible true. So when I say here show all, I'm saying that all the widgets that belong to this application window object, I want them to set the visibility to true. I want to show everything. You can also be specific about which ones you want to show, which ones you want to hide. But since this is just a demo application, I'm going to just show you the basics. So let's render our application here. So it's opening. Here in this part, we are supposed to see the GNOME web page loading, you see? So here we have a GNOME website already working. So it was that simple. But, oops, I clicked outside. I'm just going to go back to the chat to see if everything is okay, if I'm not just talking to myself. Yes, it seems that it's all fine. All right, so what else shall we want for a web browser? I think it's important to have a place for me to type the next address, right? I want to be able to go to a different page, not just to have to build my application every single time to just browse the internet. So here in the top, we have this GTK header bar. Header bar is this top bar here you see on the top of the GNOME applications. Various GNOME applications have this bar here in the top, which have other widgets on it. So it's a container, it's a type of GTK container. So I am going to remove the title of it, and I'm going to add a child widget to it. And this child widget is going to be a GTK entry, which is a GTK widget that receives text. So here I'm defining the object and I'm setting it to be visible. Oops, there's a typo here. Setting it to true. Oops. Right. So let's build again and see if it appears. I think it's important to go incrementally step by step while you're building your application, because if you just sit down and type, and then you run, it might be much harder to find where your bugs start. So you see here in the top, we already have a bar, but I'm going to type everything here, and it's not going to do anything because it's not connected. There's no programming logic behind it. It's just a visual element in the screen. So now we need to actually connect it, do things with it. Before we do it, let's expand it. Let's make it fill the whole space there so we don't have a small one, because real browsers have a big bar on the top, and we want to have a browser that looks professional. So I'm going to tell it to expand. So expand means horizontally expand. These are all properties from Jtk widget. So we can go here to the documentation and check Jtk widget. And let's see what's the properties that they have. Properties. So there are various things you can tweak about widget. Here's the one I just set. Expand, whether the widget wants more horizontal space. So it just receives a Boolean value, so it's either true or false. So let's check it out. I just said expand here, and I'm going to run. There you go. Now you see that it has grown. The Jtk header bar has 3 containers inside of it. So it has like the left part, the center part, and then the right part. I want this to be very centered, so I'm going to specify the child type of it. So I'm going to tell the header bar that this child widget that it contains is the title one, is the one that is centered. So I think I should probably express it by saying child type and title. Be aware that I really don't know these things by head. So yeah, there we go. This worked. So now the bar is all over the place. But as I said, we didn't connect it, so nothing's going to happen. If I press enter in here, if I type anything, nothing happens. Let's connect it to the code. For me to be able to talk to it, to do things with it on the Python part of the code, I am going to assign a user identification name to it. So I'm going to put here URL entry, I guess. I think that's a pretty standard name. So now I need to have it defined here as a template child, so I am able to talk to this object, to interact with this object. And this Jtk entry must have a signal that does something when a person press enter, because it's very useful for you to type something on an entry and press enter and just submit that change, right? So let's check the signals it has, and that's how I'm going to abort the signal, the event-oriented programming. So here we have the activate signal. The activate signal is emitted when the user hits the enter key, so it's exactly what we're looking for. So the activate signal is emitted when the user hits the enter key. While the signal is used, a key byte signal is also commonly used by application to intercept activation of entries. All right. So there are 2 ways I can connect this URL entry. I could just simply say URL entry connect and connect to a callback to another function that is going to do something when that signal is emitted. But I can also connect them directly from the UI file. This is very nice to be able to simplify the Python part of it. So I can say here signal name equals activated. So when the signal is activate, the handler is going to be a function, a Python function in my program. So I'm going to call it, oh, my cat appeared. Let me just put him down. So the handler is going to be on URL entry activated. I'm going to call it this way. So this is just us naming things, right? So I'm going to create a Python method here that is going to be URL entry activated. It's going to receive firstly a reference to the object. And let's see what's the arguments it gets. So the parameters is a Jtk entry itself. So it's just the entry. How do this callback gets connected from the UI file from the Python code? There is also an annotation for that. The annotation is Jtk template callback. So this defines, makes this method here map to the definition on the UI file on the other side. So what I want to do is that once the person activates it, once they press enter, I want to tell the web view to load another page. So what's the content of the entry? I'm gonna call it URL, and I'm going to get entry get text. So another time we're gonna go to Jtk entry and check for its methods. Get text. There you go. So it returns a string that it has the content of the entry. So we are going to just feed the string to this method that we saw above, the one that loads the URI. So the same one that we saw here on line 34, we are going to be using here on 41 to load the page. Let's try this. So the application is here. Let's let the GNOME page load. Nice. So let's type another website now. I'm going to type my personal website. Press enter. You see, we don't have a loading widget yet, so you're not going to see the feedback of things necessarily, but you see that it works, right? There's another page that loaded there. We could try loading google.com. So we already have here google.com. So it already works. So before we move forward to the next feature that we're going to implement on our browser, is everybody following up? Or is everybody seeing my screen and all?
Yes, I am following up and I am seeing your screen.
Oh, amazing. So let's add more buttons to our interface. Let's make it much better. Browsers have history, right? You are able to go forward and back on a web page, right? So let's add a back button to our header bar. I want it to be on the left because that's how I have it on Firefox. So I'm not a designer, so I'm not going to be opinionative about how things should look like. I'm just going to do it what most people do. So I'm going to add a GTK button here. And I'm going to set it to visible already. And I want this button to have an image on it. So the button is also a container. So it can have a text, but it can also have another widget inside. So another widget that I'm going to add is an image. So I'm going to add a child to my button and create a Jtk image on it. So let me close it here. I usually close the tags manually because I'm using Vim while programming, but now I'm using Gnome Builder, so it can close it for me as well. So it's very convenient. And the Jtk image must have a property that tells us what's the image that we're going to use. So Jtk image, let's see the properties. So there's a file, so I can pass it a file. There's icon name, so I can pass it an icon name that belongs already on the toolkit. So Jtk also has some icons that it contains. So these are icons that Jtk applications normally reuse. So you see Firefox is Jtk, and we have here these buttons on the top. These are likely Jtk buttons. So let's use icon name. So it receives a string. How do I find out the name of the icon? So I'm going to open a terminal. Actually, let me open a separated terminal here, so I can. I am using Fedora Silverblue as a distribution, so I need to use containers for developing. Oh, I actually don't have a container. So let me create one, and hopefully this is going to be fast. Yeah, it's not going to be fast. Anyway, so there is an application called Jtk Image Viewer, I believe, Jtk Icon Browser, I believe, that has a catalog of the icons on Jtk. I just happen to know exactly what's the name of the icon, so until that loads, I'm going to go ahead, and so we don't need to wait. So the icon that is the arrow that goes back, so the same arrow that Firefox has here on the top that goes to the back, it has a name that is called Go Previous Symbolic, I believe. There are variants on the image. So if I just do Go Previous, like here, and save and check the result of the application, you see the button here. This one is a colored button with details. There is even some shadow on it. But the one that Firefox was using, it's a symbolic one. It's the one that is much more simple. So let me try to add this symbolic prefix to it. I'm going to build again. Yeah, you see that it looks much more like the Firefox one. Of course, when I click Nothing happens. So let's connect this button. So the button has a signal. The same way the GTK entry we saw before has a signal when you press enter that is called activate. The button must have another signal that happens that gets to trigger when I do some action on it. So let me check GTK button and see what signals it has. So it has the activate signal, has the click signal, and then there's this enter leave where about when the pointer enters the button. You see here is deprecated, so we shouldn't be using new code. So we are going to ignore it. The clicked one here is very self-explanatory on the name. So when the button has been activated, pressed or released, so when it's clicked, and then it receives the parameters, the button itself. So let's implement that. So we are going to create here a signal. The name is going to be clicked, and the handler is going to be on previous button clicked. So yeah, this is me again being very creative and naming things. So it's another callback. So we are going to copy just like the previous one. Callback. It's a Python method. It's going to receive self and then the button. WebKit WebView needs to do something once the button gets clicked, right? We want to tell the WebView to go back in its history. The WebView is also keeping history for us. So this is also some logic that we don't need to have on our own application, but the WebView can do it for us. So let me check the WebKit WebView documentation and see how I can go back in history. So I'm gonna find a method to go back, something like go. There's one called go back and another one called go forward. So that's very convenient. So go forward and go back. Let me click here on the go back definition. So loads the previous history item. You can even monitor it by connecting to this load change signal. So that's pretty cool. Let's just do the go back. So once the button gets clicked, we tell the WebView to go back. Right. I hope it works. I didn't save here on the side. Builder told me. Yeah, so let's run. So here we have an application. Let's let it load the GNOME page. I'm going to add my website again because I want. And now let's try clicking the button. So I click the button and we are back. So this works. One thing you probably noticed is that I got back to the GNOME web page, but the URL still here shows the website that I typed. So this is not synchronized between the WebView and the GTK entry. So this is another feature that our application needs. It's very undesirable to have something like this, right? So since we are already here on the WebView, let's see its properties, because it must have a property that keeps track of the URI, right? So here we have this one that it's a property that's called URI, is a string, and pretty much just returns the value of the current page. Another great thing about GTK is that you can connect to properties and connect a callback to when the property gets modified. So there is a notification system for GObject properties. So I can pretty much say that I want my WebView to call a callback once the URI changes. So this syntax here, notify with the two semicolons, is how I am able to tell GTK that I want to notify. I'm able to tell GObject actually that it's what implements properties in objects. When this property changes, I want to connect to a callback. So let's call the callback URL changed. Again, creativity. So def URL changed. So when the URL changed, let's see if the callback, yeah, it's probably not going to have anything. I want the entry text to be the WebView URI. I think that this is kind of easy, right? So maybe let's go make it very easier by having a URL variable here and then passing it as the text to the entry. Hope it works. Let's try. So I'm building it. Okay. So it doesn't seem to be working because I already see that the GNOME page loaded and the URL didn't change. So this is probably likely because this method here doesn't have the right parameters about it. So the parameters of a property is probably the source object that caused the change, and then the event, the widget itself, right? So I'm going to call it widget. We're not going to be using this, so just that Python requires you to specify the parameter. So I suppose that that's why. Well, still not. So maybe let's check the logs. Why is that? Here you have a lot of logs from WebKit, right? Because WebKit entry is not defined. Oh, of course. So you see live coding has these things. The URL entry is the one we are talking about actually, and it's a object property, so we need to prefix it with self. I haven't been using Python lately, I'm sorry. So let's try again. So we are building, and yes, the URL appears over there. So now if I go to my website, the URL doesn't need to change, but if I go back, it changed. So another functionality we did. I'm gonna check the chat because I've been talking and staring at my screen. Yeah, it seems like everything is fine. Please let me know if you stop seeing my things because I am really just looking at the code. Let's add another button. The previous button goes to the back, so we should definitely be able to go one that goes forward. So I can go back and forward on the history. So I'm just gonna copy this button and just modify it because programmers are lazy, right? So I'm gonna modify here the signal to on previous button clicked to on next button clicked, and the image it's called next. So these very basic modifications are already going to add the button there. Since we are here already, let's already connect the button because the logic is going to be very, very similar to the one above. So self button web view go, and we need to find out what is the method that web view has for going forward. We saw that there was a go back, and then there is a go forward. So it's very literal. Go forward. Let's give it a go. All right, so the URL is here. I'm gonna change it to something else. So I'm gonna get back to the GNOME web page, and then I'm gonna get back to my website. So this works. There's something weird about these buttons being far away. You see here in Builder that these buttons are connected, and if you go also to Firefox, you see that they are like nicely allocated. So GNOME or Jtk actually has containers, right? And all the widgets, they can be somehow styled with CSS, just like in the web. So GNOME already has a set of CSS selectors that are preset CSS classes that you might want for your objects. So this might not make much sense for you listening to this now, but it's going to be very obvious when I show you the example. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to create an extra container, a GTK box, that is going to contain these buttons that we have, the previous and the forward button. So it's going to have these buttons as child widgets of it. So I'm going to indentate here, I guess indentate is the word. And then I need to close the object. This object itself is a child of the header bar, so we also cannot define it here. We need to define it with one more level of indentation. So to just simplify what I said, I just created a GTK box, and I just wrapped these two buttons that we had before inside of it. The reason why I did that is because now I want to be able to use a selector to the box that is going to apply to it. So I'm going to use style, and I'm going to assign a class name to it. You can Google for GTK CSS selectors, I suppose. to find out how CSS is defining in GTK and how you can refer to widget properties and to widgets themselves, what are the CSS selectors and all. But there is one class that I already know that is called the linked one. And it has a very interesting effect on the widgets that are inside the box. It pretty much says that the widgets inside the box, they should be glued together, they should be linked. So let's see the effect of that. I just created a box and then just assigned to it the class linked, the CSS class linked. So you see now the buttons are connected in a much more stylish way. So I'm going to show you a very interesting tool. That is the GTK Inspector. The GTK Inspector allows you to interactively click on UI elements on your application and interact with the GTK properties. So what I'm going to do is that I just have here a shell session inside of my Flatpak sandbox that has this application. I'm going to tell GTK debug interactive, and I'm going to run this Python application directly. I probably need to define a display variable here. Yeah, there you go. Oh, okay, so my GTK is not built with enable debug. Yeah, so unfortunately I'm not going to be able to show this vector because I am using a GTK that wasn't built with it. But anyway, the GTK Inspector allows you to just click on the elements of the interface and interact with them. So you are able to change the expand, the alignment, all these properties that we've seen here on the documentation, specifically about the GTK ones. So I would be able to click on a GTK entry and change its properties, just like the inspector that browsers have, right? I think in Firefox, if you have Ctrl-Shift-I, you have also inspector that you can click on things and see its properties. So GTK also has one. Unfortunately, I cannot show it. Yeah, this is one of the problems with live demos, that some things not go as expected. But yeah, this is a simple web browser application. Other simple features that one can implement on it, for instance, would be for the buttons to be only clickable when there's actually an action to be made. So if the browser already opened gnome.org and there is no history to be made, the buttons are kind of dummy. So making the buttons unable to be clicked until we have a history would be a next feature to implement. Having tabs would be something nice to implement, and then you can check other widgets that GTK has, like GTK Notebook, that allows you to create tabs for your application. We can have refresh button. We could have some menus over there. So it's up to your creativity and to explore the GTK applications. Another practice that I do quite often when I'm developing is to just go to other code bases of existing GNOME applications and just check how they do it. So you are developing a Python application that you can most easily go to GNOME Music that is written in Python and see how they implement certain things. Usually git grep for the name of the concept you are looking for is a very easy way to get around. So let's say that we are developing here the application window. So maybe let's see how the application window looks like for GNOME Music. So you see that there is a definition here in this file. So I'm going to open this file. So here you have the GNOME Music Real implementation. You see that it's much more complex than what we have, but at the same time, it's very similar, right? We have here the template annotation connecting the two files. We have the class definition initialized. We have the object properties here that are getting mapped from the UI file. And then the init, that is the things that get executed once this object is instantiated. You see here some signals being connected and all. So you see that it's very trivial to develop graph applications in this constructive way when you are starting with a very simple, small concept and then you are interactively adding features to it. So I hope you folks felt inspired for writing applications. We have, as I said, interesting guides you can find on developer.gnome.org. You can have the various guides about specific libraries, but also API references, in this case, the C implementations of them. But here in the side, you see links for various language bindings. You also should feel very welcome to join the GNOME communities and talk to the developers and ask questions. We have the Newcomers channel, as I mentioned on the slides before, that that is for helping with issues such as this one. And also in the GTK one, if you want to talk to the developers of GTK directly. So yeah, I hope I didn't talk too fast. I hope you felt not bored about looking at the code. I see that it can be boring for some. But I hope to see a lot of GTK applications over there because it's so easy to do it nowadays. Like this application that I developed just now is already on a Flatpak because Gnome Builder already bootstrapped the Flatpak manifest for it. So I can already compose a Flatpak file that I'll be able to share this bundle with my friends. And I also will be able to simply publish this manifest on flathub.org. There is this website where Flatpak applications are distributed. So if you are creative about creating your own text editor, your own web browser, your own music player, image manipulation programs, name it. It's very doable to do with GTK, and you can do it in your language of your choice because we support various languages. So yes, I think that's all, and I hope you're not tired of hearing me talking for so long. I guess I could take some questions or comments.
Wow.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Question one, like,
Okay.
it looks very simple to get started with Python and GTK library. Okay, so I hope everyone gets to learn how to build a web browser with the Gnome library. Okay, so we'll be moving on. Yeah, so we have Molly and Rosanna now active, and we're moving on to their presentation. Okay, so while we get them ready, if you have any question, you can drop it, and Felipe is going to respond to it.
Hello. So, Felipe, when you say any language, you mean like even web developers can use the JTK website and build some application?
Yes, exactly. You can, the same things that we develop now with Python, it would be very easy to make in C or in Vala. I guess if I could, for instance, share my screen here very quickly, I could show you how Gnome Builder can easily, I hope you are seeing my screen now. Yeah. So Gnome Builder can, I'm going to close it and start a new one. So Gnome Builder can start a new application and in any of these languages here. And if you want to do something in a language that is not one of these, you also are most likely able to do so, but these ones are the ones we have the preset configurations. So you could still achieve the same thing by writing a JavaScript application.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for watching the talk.
Okay, so if you have more questions, you can unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
And I can also be answering questions on the chat if you prefer to write, no problems.
So someone is asking on the chat, he's called Patrick. How do we get to contribute to Genome without coding?
Yeah, so on the Etherpad, I pulled some links. I'm going to post the Etherpad link again on the chat because it's probably in the back. So in the Etherpad, I have some links about how to contribute design, translation, documentation. And Christy and Regina also mentioned in their previous presentation about how to contribute to engagement. So the links on the Etherpad are a good start point to how to find out how to contribute to Gnome in various fronts, not just code.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we are still waiting for more questions before we welcome our new speakers. All right, guys, before, without wasting much time, let's welcome Molly and Rosanna to take us on the topic, creating considerate communities with code of conduct. Hello, Molly, can you hear me?
Yes, but when you're uploading a presentation, you can't talk. So just 1 second.
All right, I can hear you, so nice to even have you on board.
Cool. Rosanna, are you there?
I am here.
Cool. So Melissa, I see, is also online. Melissa, if you'd prefer, this is your time. You're welcome to go. And
I'm here. Why don't you guys, since you're already set up and uploaded, go ahead and I can slot in at another time.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Hi, Rosanna. Hi, everyone. I'm Molly DeBlanc. I work for the Gnome Foundation. I'm the Strategic Initiatives Manager. You can find me and Rosanna. I think I hopefully got your... I realized today that Rosanna's Twitter account might be a dinosaur reference and got really excited.
No, just my name backwards.
Nice to have you, Rosanna.
Oh, that makes total sense. Good job, me. I really like dinosaurs, though. These are our social media accounts and our email addresses. So I'm the Strategic Initiatives Manager. It's okay if you don't know what that means. When I started, I didn't know what that meant either. I should really stop making that joke at this point, since I know what my job is. I do partnerships with other organizations. I do outreach and sponsorships and donations. I joke that I do everything Neil doesn't want to do that Rosanna doesn't also do. But mostly that means I ghostwrite for Neil sometimes.
Yes, I'm Rosanna Ying, and Molly's already introduced me somewhat. I'm the Director of Operations at the Gnome Foundation. I've been with Gnome since pretty much the very beginning, so I've been here a while. And it's a great place, so we're here to talk about how to keep it that way.
Cool. And we're both on the Code of Conduct Committee, along with some other awesome people who are in this room right now and are not just welcome, but encouraged to answer questions, specifically Felipe Borges and Federico. So they're great. Say hi. Okay, next slide. We'd like to thank you for reading the Code of Conduct. And it's okay if you didn't read the Code of Conduct, because we're going to talk about it. But in general, it's really great to read them before events start. And we're going to be talking about it, the history of it, and why it looks the way it does, and why we designed it to be the way it is.
Yeah, and apologize to hear the trumpet in the background. This is the hour my kid has banned, so goes very well with the elephants. Yes, so thank you so much for reading the Code of Conduct. Like Molly said, it's if you haven't done so, the link was sent to you in your email this morning. So you should be able to find it online.
Loading. So this event is covered by the Code of Conduct. And in fact, all GNOME events are covered by the Code of Conduct. And so to back up a little bit, codes of conduct cover, depending on the community's theory and philosophy behind the code of conduct, cover either ways that are acceptable to behave or ways that are not acceptable to behave, or a combination of the both. And these are designed to help communities be super awesome, which we'll say a little bit more about soon.
Yeah, and this code of conduct is actually, it's a work in progress. We've actually, this is, I think the current one is our third iteration of the code of conduct. So it's not a set in stone. We try and move with what needs to be done, and we react obviously to events that happen. So what we have right now is actually a very new iteration. It was our online community one, which we will be talking about soon. And we've changed it so that it covers all our events as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'd like to, sorry, I forgot to mention this earlier. We'll be reading the text on the slides in case anyone has vision issues. I recognize that they're not all the easiest to read, and I strongly apologize for that. Next slide. So while the Code of Conduct for GNOME covers events, it also covers a lot of other things. This slide lists them all. I don't think we'll read all of this slide, but highlight a few things to say that basically it covers everything. And that's not just places where we're interacting with each other, like issue tracking systems and mailing lists, but also places where GNOME is storing information. So that includes documentation. It includes code repositories, which could mean things like variable names. It could mean things like comments, and some other cool stuff that exists. Community spaces, events. Events is an interesting question in terms of what's covered, because it doesn't just include the moments that the conference talks themselves are occurring. There are also a bunch of other things that happen along with conference events, including parties, private events that include event attendees, conference hotels, walkways, hallways, elevators, stairs.
Lunch. Lunches, like when people get together for lunches, even if they go off the premises, that's still covered.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just conferences, it's Hackfest and other events too. And
release parties, and anytime people get together. I mean, right now we're not really getting together, but when we do get back together, I want everyone to realize that anytime you meet someone for a GNOME event, whether it's social, hacking, planning, any of that, that's all covered.
So why do we have a code of conduct? Codes of conduct, also frequently called COCs, they're for you and they're also for everyone else. So they're there to protect you and to make spaces welcoming and wonderful. So they're there to guide, like to create a space for you and to help you identify what's good behavior. But they're also there to help everyone else identify what is good behavior and provide safety in good spaces.
Yeah, what I like to say is that it sets the tone. It lets people know what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and that way people know when they show up what to expect from others and what they themselves can and cannot do in those spaces.
I think that comment on expectations is a really good one, because going to a conference, especially for the first time, can be really scary. Speaking at a conference can be really scary, and knowing what other people will do, but also what they won't do, like knowing that they'll be a supportive bunch, but also knowing that they won't be an aggressive bunch, or if they are being an aggressive bunch, that's unacceptable and things can happen. GNOME is for everyone, regardless of many things, including, but not limited to, age, body size, caste, citizenship, disability, education, ethnicity, familiar status, gender expression, gender identity, genetic information, immigration status, level of experience, nationality, personal appearance, pregnancy, race, religion, sex characteristics, sexual orientation, sexual identity, socioeconomic status, tribe, and veteran status. We say includes a lot because these lists are non-exhaustive, which means that there are things that we didn't necessarily, or I should say the writers didn't necessarily think to include or were aware of as issues, especially when you're dealing with global communities.
Yeah, and lists like these are one of the things that we are constantly looking at and trying to see how we can improve. That being said, that we want to make sure that it's a non-exhaustive list, because we know that there are other things out there that we want to protect, and we want to make sure everyone realizes that this is just a sampling of what can be covered.
Mm-hmm. I don't know a lot about the history of the GNOME Code of Conduct, but I know with other codes of conduct, and by experience doing stuff related to enforcement. I don't love the word enforcement, but I don't have a better one readily available. Like, we didn't think about things like immigration status, but also we didn't think about things like caste or tribe, because as Americans and Europeans writing things, like, they just weren't on our radar.
Yeah, a lot of this is we're learning along with everyone else. So that's why we want to make sure that everyone knows it's not exhaustive. We're open to suggestions.
Mm-hmm. So codes of conduct do lots of things, and one of the things that they do is they help us be awesome by letting us, the GNOME one especially provides models for like great behavior that we can follow. I forgot. No, that's soon. And this is because sometimes FOSS is terrible. FOSS stands for free and open source software. No one likes that it's terrible sometimes, but that happens. Something I'd recommend if you want to get a little more into that is Dawn Foster, who does many things, including research around how people talk on the Linux kernel mailing list. She looks at, or she has looked at, like what welcoming language is and what unwelcoming language is, and how that affects the community.
Yeah, and like I've been very lucky. I know I've been very lucky. I've been surrounded by people who are very supportive, and we want to make sure that everyone else who comes into the GNOME community find the same supportive environments. And this is, the Code of Conduct is there to help make that happen and to protect us all.
So why this particular Code of Conduct? There are a lot of parts to that. I'd start by saying, Rosanna, do you want to talk a little bit about the history of it?
Sure. We've actually had a Code of Conduct for a very long time. But it was not really an enforced Code of Conduct. It was a do your best, and we won't. It actually literally said it. Back in the day, it originally came out that was not going to be enforced, which of course isn't very helpful. And so about, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, we created a committee to try and create a code of conduct that is more respective of individuals and would find a way to make sure that when things do happen, and even though nothing had happened yet that we were aware of, maybe that was a problem too, because we wanted to make sure people were comfortable telling us when things happen, and that we had something in place so that we can make sure that we can handle these occurrences. So about 4 years ago, there was a code of conduct committee team. It was a team, it wasn't a committee quite yet, where we worked together to create a code of conduct, and that was the first draft of the events code of conduct, which you may have seen. It's been around and has just actually been replaced by what we have now. And it was good. It was useful, but it only covered events. So at that point, we consulted with Sage Sharp, who is a wonderful, really helpful person, and they helped us create our conference code of conduct, our community online code of conduct, which was adopted about a year ago now. And then recently we've amended that to encompass everything so that it replaced the event code of conduct. So we only have one code of conduct now that covers everything.
To kind of build on something Rosanna said earlier, one of my favorite anecdotes about codes of conduct is that when communities adopt them, reports of incidents, so people saying something happened, go up usually. And one thought is like, one argument some people say is like, oh, codes of conduct make communities worse. But the counter to that is that people who report incidents say they're more comfortable reporting incidents, knowing that there's like a system, knowing that people will read it and respond to it, knowing that there's recourse for them, and also knowing that there's like a list of things that are and aren't acceptable that provide guidance for them and help them know that something that happened to them or that they saw like wasn't okay.
Yeah, and it's not even like the committee. I'm on the committee now, and Molly's on the committee, and we do hear some things, but it's not just that we're here. It's that the items are listed out, and personally, knowing that the code of conduct is there, if someone acts in a way that's inappropriate, I know I can point to it and say, hey, it's not okay. It says in our code of conduct that we have to act.
Unmute.
Yeah, I saw that. That was weird. Okay, yes. So there are times when I feel like I can speak out and tell someone that what they're doing is inappropriate, which prior to having a code of conduct, I didn't feel like I had the right to do. So having that there helps people have the confidence to speak up for themselves.
So we're going to talk about the current code of conduct some more, which will include, among other things, reading parts of it and explaining what those parts mean. So let's say you want to report an incident. Something happens to you, or you see something happening to someone else, and you want the committee to know. You can email the committee at code-of-conduct-committee@gnome.org.
Yes, we probably should find a shorter, better one, but that is what we have right now. And if you're not comfortable sending it to the entire committee, you can go find our website. All our members are listed, and you can reach any one of us individually if you feel if you're more comfortable doing that.
Our email addresses are listed, but we're also all on Rocket Chat and available. I mean, I don't know if other people are comfortable saying they're available there. I'm comfortable saying I'm available there.
I am on Rocket Chat, so you can always ping me on Rocket Chat.
Reports are confidential. So if you send something in, that means, okay, that can mean a few different things. It could mean that, let's say, especially if you want to report somebody who's on the committee to an individual, that will mean we won't be talking with them about it. But the team will discuss reports amongst each other unless you specify that you're uncomfortable with that in some way. If you are uncomfortable with that, that might, I don't actually know, would that mean that like it's less likely that action will come out of it?
No, if you're reporting against someone or even most of the team, like if you have something against, there's 4 people on the team right now. So if Molly and I together have done something and you want to report against the 2 of us, you can report to the other 2 members of the Code of Conduct Committee. And if they don't have enough people to make a decision, there's actually procedures in place for people from the board of directors to step in to help out.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So the first section of the behavior is about how to be awesome in Gnome. The in Gnome phrase is borrowed from someone who does code of conduct in the Fedora community, and I think it's a great framing because it talks about how we want people to be in Gnome without necessarily saying how you're supposed to be in other communities or in your life outside of Gnome.
Yes, actually, back up a little bit. I just forgot. When we say reports are confidential, who is reporting is confidential too. We want people to report things they see and not just things that happen to them. So if you see something that's happening, obviously, if you feel comfortable stepping in and stopping it, that's awesome. But if you don't feel comfortable or you're worried about your safety, please don't. If it's at an in-person event, come get one of us or an incident responder, which we'll talk about later. But we do want people to report incidents that they observe, and your privacy will be kept so that no one knows who is doing the reporting. Sorry about that.
Wow, that was great. So examples of behavior that contributes to creating a positive environment include, I'm not going to read all of this. I'm going to read the main bullet points, which are to be friendly, to be empathetic, which means that you want to be respectful of different viewpoints and experiences and like try to be emotionally gentle towards others, being respectful and being polite, be considerate, be patient and generous. And this is especially for writing things, which is try to be concise. It's easy to get long-winded in comment. I am very guilty of this. It is easy for me to write a whole lot. And I know that's like not great.
But yeah, this list is also in the actual code of conduct. So if you want to go and read it more carefully at your leisure, please do.
And these slides are also up on GitLab, and I can share the link in the comments after the talk. Wow, I made this way too tiny. Inappropriate behavior is also a long list. And there's more descriptions about what these things are. And they include deliberate intimidation, stalking, or following. And that can be, like, that's a thing that you can do in person, but it's also a thing you can do online. Sustained disruption of online discussions, talks, or other events. So, like, I'll add to that, don't be a jerk when someone is talking, but also don't be a jerk when you're asking questions. Harassment of people who don't drink alcohol or other legal substances. Sexist, racist, homophobic, transphobic, ableist language, or otherwise exclusionary language. unwelcome sexual attention or behavior that contributes to a sexualized environment, unwelcome physical contact, violence or threats of violence, influencing or encouraging inappropriate behavior, and possession of an offensive weapon at a Gnome event. What does offensive weapon mean here?
What is what? Sorry?
Can you say about what offensive weapon means here? As a
offensive weapon is actually left deliberately vague so that the conference organizers can, at their discretion, decide what is considered offensive. Obviously, like for self-defense, it also depends on the laws of this jurisdiction and what is considered comfortable. Like a pepper spray, for example, would be allowed in some places and not others, but that's considered, you know, what's considered legal in that area. If anyone has any questions about any of the things on this list and what's appropriate or not, please feel free to contact us. I know it's a long list. It's very confusing, and thankfully I haven't seen most of these things happen. But it's here in case, so that people, as it's like I said earlier, sets the tone. People know what's not appropriate.
Something that I think is really important, which is a thought I had that just totally slipped my mind. Is that if you are uncertain something you want to do or say is appropriate, you can contact the Code of Conduct Committee. Be like, I want to write this thing, or I want to respond to this email in this way, or I want to bring this thing to a conference. It's totally okay to ask. No judgment.
We can make exceptions, right? If you're doing a talk that talks about, say, ableist language, then obviously that wouldn't be that might be a positive talk where you're talking about how to avoid ableist language, but someone might say, hey, that's against the Code of Conduct. So obviously we'd be able to give exceptions for things like that, but we might also, you know, put a disclaimer out before your talk that it would include things like that.
Cool. Safety versus comfort. Rosanna, could you say a few things about the safety versus comfort debate?
Sure. We feel that as a community that having someone's safety is more important than obviously someone else's comfort. So this is a something where if someone is privileged, has their privilege removed, or they might feel somewhat uncomfortable, but it's not a safety issue. It's just that they no longer have the what they're used to. They're not as they cannot do what they cannot rely on something that they're used to relying on, even though no one else has that ability. So if that ability hampers other people's safety or makes them feel less safe, then it is not acceptable in our community. Does that make sense?
I think that something to remember about safety is that a behavior or a way of speaking that may feel fine to you does not necessarily feel fine to someone else, and might make them feel uncomfortable. And not just uncomfortable, but might make them feel like it's not a safe environment for them, they're not welcome there. And if that happens, what you want to do is generally considered less important than than somebody being welcome in that space, especially because chances are if one person feels unwelcome, other people do too.
Let me give you an example, actually. So if, say, someone is used to saying a word that another community might find derogatory, right? Might find insulting. the first person might say, hey, that's just the way I speak. I've always spoken that way. No one's ever had a problem with it. They're comfortable. That's their comfort. The other group who don't feel comfortable, who feel it's a derogatory term, may feel, it's derogatory. It makes them feel uncomfortable, not just uncomfortable, but unsafe, because it's they're feeling insulted in this community, right? So the use of that term would be considered unacceptable, even though the first person said, I've always used it and no one's ever complained before.
So Rosanna's talked about privilege. I also want to reference reverse isms, which is the idea that so this is a common, not super common, but like racism is a major problem in the United States. Most racism is towards Black, Indigenous, people of color, meaning that if you're not of like European descent, you deal with a lot more hate and problems. Some people say that by creating policies or rules that appear to add preference to Black, Indigenous, people of color, that you're like being racist towards white people, and that simply doesn't exist. That's the short version.
I don't have anything to add to that. That's
the other thing I'd say is that something I've seen on mailing lists is people talk about their right to free speech, and that by saying you can't talk a certain way, you're like stepping on their right to say what they want. Right to free speech doesn't exist in private communities, right? Rights are things that
they have a right to say what they say, but they don't have the right to make us let them use our platform to say it.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. Thank you. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what happens at events, and how to follow through on behaviors. I thought I added more slides there. So at events, there will be a code of conduct or an incident response team, and they're there to go to in addition to the code of conduct committee, and the people who are on site will be there to like immediately respond to big things that happen. Sometimes smaller things happen or stuff that feels like more regular, and when those things occur, they might not be responded to during the event itself, but after the fact.
Incident responders do loop in the Code of Conduct Committee. All the Code of Conduct Committee members are actually have training to be incident responders, but we also have additional folks who have gone through the training that volunteer to be incident responders at events. And if something happens, they will take the report and send it on to the committee for us to look into.
Mm-hmm. So when we're outside of events, what happens is someone will contact the Code of Conduct Committee, and under normal circumstances, we'll discuss their weekly meetings, and we'll discuss reports and incidents, and try our best to come to agreement on what the proper course of action is. And that can be anything from nothing to much more extreme measures.
But usually we do talk to the people involved to find out what happened and see before we do make a judgment, which may just be, reminding someone that the code of conduct exists, and that's and usually that is the case. We remind them that it does exist. They need to make sure that they follow the rules, and and as a warning, so to something like that.
What happens when someone violates the code of conduct? Lots of things, and there's a list on the next page. But I want to say that, like, violating the code of conduct, especially the first time, like, it's not a death sentence, and it's not like immediate expulsion. Normally, it's like you just are talked to about what happened. Somebody talks with you about what happened.
It depends on the severity of the offense, obviously. But yes, most times we talk and discuss about how to make sure it doesn't happen. We want to make sure that the person who violates the code of conduct understand what they did wrong, and realize that it's unacceptable behavior, so that it hopefully doesn't happen again.
So this is a list. This is a sample of things. I am not going to read this slide because we are running out of time. We are almost finished with slides, and there is a lot of stuff on it. But to summarize, it can be anything from an email or verbal warning to the public calling of a resignation of a person from their responsibilities.
Note from earlier that we do value privacy very, very highly. So it does take quite a lot for the things on the bottom of this list to actually happen. But as I also mentioned earlier, if you have any questions about anything on this list, feel free to contact one of us.
I think I've been in free software for, I think, like, I say that my first contribution was in 2008. And like, I've only seen twice when people were publicly called to resign. So, and that's not in GNOME, that's like across all of free software. So a good question is, like, why are we qualified to do these things and to talk about these things? And like Rosanna said, we've been through training. And what's really cool about training is you can also go through training. We offer them in conjunction with experts at various events. I think we're planning to do one, well, we're hoping to do one around GNOME Asia. So if you're interested in that, please contact the Code of Conduct Committee, and we can talk about what's possible.
Yeah, we have a list of people that we will contact for our next training. So please do sign up if you're interested.
So go forth, be awesome with your new exciting knowledge about how to be a cool community member. Take the positive things as recommendations, and when you look at the negative things, think about them as like, here's some stuff I should stay away from, rather than like, if I do any of these things, I am banned forever.
Yes, don't forget the Code of Conduct is, sorry.
No, go on.
Oh, I was just saying, just remember the Code of Conduct is there to protect you as well as provide a safe space for everybody.
So that's what we have. Those are all the slides I made. I don't know if we have time for questions. This is some of our individual contact information. And that's what I got. Do you have any?
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Molly and Rosanna. That was an interesting one. So if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask them questions directly.
You can also list questions in the chat if you don't want to deal with unmuting yourself. Aw, I do appreciate all the nice things.
Thank you, everyone, for all your nice comments. If you do have any questions, feel free. And if you're not comfortable sending them here, just send them up to us, and we're happy to respond.
Cool.
Okay, so while we are getting the questions, I would like Melissa to get ready for our talk.
Oh. It seems to me like there aren't any questions coming out. So I'm happy to sign off at this point. Okay. Talk to you all online.
Bye.
Okay, so we welcome Melissa to take our presentation. She'll be talking about new to Genome. Remember what it's like. Okay, so Melissa, are you there?
Yeah, she is. I guess she's uploading her talk, so she can't say anything until she's done. But she's there already.
Okay, so just give us some time.
Yes, I'm here. I am. Let me just get set up. Sorry.
Hey, nice to have you.
Thank you for having me. That was a wonderful talk by Molly and Rosanna. Can you guys see all my slides? Or not all of them? Can you see the slides?
Yeah, yes, I can see.
Okay. Well, I'm ready to get started whenever you are all ready for me.
We are ready for you.
Camera. Hold on, my camera's not on. I'm sorry. Okay, here I am. I think you see me and you see my PowerPoint, correct?
Sure, yeah, we can.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, today if we're ready to get started, today I'm going to talk about what it's like to be new to Gnome, and I want to share my experiences as a new contributor. So, oh, look at all those bullets. That's an error. So, as I said, I'm going to share my experiences as a new contributor to Gnome and as somebody outside of the community. Hopefully, I'll provide you with a, oh yeah, I remember that, for those of you that have been contributing for a while, and offer some suggestions to enhance your experience if you're new to Gnome as a contributor, and possibly make some suggestions for a roadmap to help you avoid some of my pitfalls, but also help you guide your way through the community. And like I said, we'll maybe consider some ways to help newcomers as they go through the process. So first, let me share a little bit about me. I'm from Los Angeles, California. At university, I studied sociology and political science. I went to business school and I studied marketing and have a business background with a graduate certificate in technology commercialization. I went to work for a public safety technology consulting company. And after that, I left to go start my own travel agency, Woodland Travel. While there, a friend introduced me to Gnome, and now I'm a part-time project manager at the Gnome Foundation. Now, a few things you did not hear me say: free software, Linux, coder, developer, programmer, and I only touched on technology very briefly. I come from a very, very fuzzy background with limited practical technical background. And so I must say that my experience in free and open software and Linux and GNOME is minimal. What I know is probably the size of this little dot on the screen. I knew when I started that I had to get up to speed as quickly as possible. And so for the last 8 months, I've been learning as much as I possibly can, as quickly as I can. I visited gnome.org, get involved. I've attended conferences when we could attend conferences, specifically FOSDEM and Scale. And I've connected with community managers and different listservs. I've included a list here, but there's different technology companies. There's different lists I've joined, and pretty much learned as much as I could as quickly as possible. I participated and led community chats on Twitter, Rocket Chat, and through webinars. Participated in social media on, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Reddit, Rocket Chat, Discourse, and even Instagram. I became a friend of GNOME, and in the process of all of this, I met lots and lots and lots of people. And the last 8 months was like drinking through a fire hose. A ton of information coming at me all at once. But now I know a little bit more about GNOME and free software. And as you can see, my circle is a little bit bigger. Some of the challenges I had as I joined, and some things that should be considered as a new contributor. For me, joining the community introduced me to a new vocabulary and way of thinking. I hadn't used FOSS, KDE, Ubuntu, GitHub, GitLab, and even UTC in my regular vocabulary. I had to, there was a new way of thinking and resources I could use. I had to consider what images I was using for my presentations to make sure that they were free software, and what platforms I was using as well. I've been very fortunate to have access to MS Office products, and I have to realize that not everybody does. And that wasn't something that I was necessarily conscious of before. There are so many resources available, and so I had to figure out where to go, what to do, and how to access these resources. In some cases, there's a vast world out there, as you all know, and as I'm quickly learning. And to find the right resource to meet my needs is sometimes not always the easiest. There are also so many chat rooms and message boards and places to go for information. The question is, where's the starting point? Where do I go? And sometimes you get started at the beginning, and other times you're jumping in the middle of the conversation. And so I know that it takes a little bit to figure out. From Discourse, Rocket Chat, IRC, Telegram, keeping them all straight and following the conversations isn't always the easiest. And, there's so many points of entry. That's the fantastic thing about the GNOME community. You can contribute in so many different ways. But unlike other groups and organizations, there's no single point of entry. Like when you join a company, you can go through HR or an orientation of some sort. So everybody knows that going through those, you're sort of new to the area. But when you jump in the middle, it's not always as straightforward. You don't know what you don't know. And very much like entering information into search engines, if you don't ask the right questions, you may not get the answers that you're looking for. I've also found that who you know matters, very much so. I was very lucky when I joined that I had a few individuals who basically held my hand for the first couple of months and actually continue to hold my hand now. They've been extraordinarily patient in helping me navigate the community and walking through some things that I can only assume they think is very basic. Over the last few months, this list has grown, and the list of people I can count on for guidance and help has been very, very helpful for me. I've been truly lucky to find people willing to help me. And I can only assume that not everybody has those same connections. So the question is, how can we help new contributors? Well, this goes a little bit to what Rosanna and Molly were speaking about before. We want to welcome and engage everyone. We want to demonstrate patience. And actually, let me back up because, people come to the community looking for a place. And whether it's a shared interest or friendship, people were looking for a place to fit in. And there are so many different ways that we can welcome and engage new contributors. And there's so many resources and guidelines that I think will be very helpful for communities. I want to make actually a point before I even jump in to say that some of the things that I have listed here are really more points to remember and points that I've seen work in other communities and groups. It's really to highlight those things as ways to engage and welcome new contributors. And it's really not to say that we are not doing those things already, but really just something to keep in the back of our minds as we move forward. So first, like I said, is patience. Patience, patience, patience. We need to remember that not everybody knows that a fix has already been suggested multiple times, or that it might be offensive to do something that isn't in free software. We're open to suggestions, and we want to guide the new contributor as best as we can. And we want to do that by sharing our knowledge. For those that have been around for a while, you have a historical knowledge that newcomers do not know. My mentors have been incredibly patient in sharing their knowledge with me. They've allowed me to ask questions, no matter how silly, and they're always available via phone, via email, via chat. They're also very kind to provide resources. And I think Molly and Rosanna highlighted this as well. They help me find what I'm looking for, whether it's sending me to a link, making suggestions for who I can speak to, or sending me to a resource. And I actually want to say that I recently had a situation actually where I created something in Word. I know I'm not supposed to. I created a PDF and I distributed that. And someone went and looked in the meta tags and saw that I had created a Word document and then posted it into a general chat room, making fun of the work that I've done. I saw this, and as a new contributor, it didn't make me feel good. It didn't make me feel welcome. And I feel like this individual could, and actually other people laughed at it. And you know what? I just didn't know. I didn't know that this wasn't right or correct. And I didn't really realize that it was maybe wrong. And so what I feel like this person could have done was showed me some patience and maybe shared their knowledge, pulled me aside, sent me a quick chat or an email or a text or something, and said, hey, I noticed X, Y, and Z. Perhaps in the future, you should consider using this program or this platform. You might find it helpful. In this way, this person would have shared their knowledge with me, shared their resources, and in the process, made a friend. And I really would have appreciated it. So that's just one example of one ways that we can share our knowledge, share our resources, and demonstrate patience. Another thing that we can do to be helpful is introduce newcomers to other community members. When someone's looking for help or just looking for a connection, sometimes introducing to a friend or someone that you think they'll get along with is extremely helpful, whether it's online or when we go back to events in person, in introducing them at a social event or at a conference. Going to a conference and not knowing somebody can be incredibly intimidating. And this might be one way to help ease the newcomer experiences. And then lastly, you want to make sure that you check in with them. How are they doing? Do they need any help, guidance, direction? How are they feeling about everything? And really just making sure that they feel welcome. On the back end, or within the resources that we have, we can certainly streamline the resources a little bit. Like I mentioned, there are a number of different resources in a number of different places, and sometimes it's tough to know where to start. Perhaps utilizing or creating an onboarding roadmap will help a new contributor figure out where to go. creating newcomer contributor, excuse me, creating new contributor networking and social events in person when we can do that, and online, similar to what we're doing now, could be incredibly useful. All of these things can be helpful in creating a point of entry for newcomers that helps them navigate through the process, as well as help us identify that they are new and perhaps needing some help. Now, why does this matter? Well, for several years, and I'm going to read most of this to you guys. For several years, the free and open source software sector has struggled to attract and maintain the number of high-quality developers that the GNOME project needs to drive the project forward. We need new contributors. In the next blue slide, in the next dark blue slide, 64.5% of engineers do not contribute to open source projects more than once a year. And this was, this was a dated study. This is from 2018 and 2019, but we definitely need new people. Now, why is the onboarding experience so important? Well, companies and organizations that excel at onboarding and employee retention experience 2.5 times the revenue growth and 1.9 times the profit margin of companies who struggle with these two criteria. And lastly, a devoted volunteer can give thousands of hours to your organization over a lifetime and make a huge impact on your cause. If you treat volunteers well and give them the tools they need to succeed, they can strengthen your team and help advance your mission. I apologize for the way this slide has come out. It wasn't this way when I created it. But all of this sums up to, we need contributors, and these are some ways that we can help. Now, somebody asked in the chat earlier, if I'm not a coder, how can I help contribute? Free software doesn't run on volunteer hours alone. Another way to contribute is, if you can afford it, financially. And while you can't see it here, I have included a link down below of what you can do to contribute financially if that is something within your means. Putting programs like this together and other conferences does cost money, and that money has to come from our sponsors and our contributions. If everybody in the community just gave $1 or whatever is affordable to them, we would have a sizable base in order to create even more events like this. So new contributors need to walk through the door themselves, but we can give them the key and the roadmap and welcome them with open arms. So thank you very much for joining me for my what it's like to be a new person in the community. Here is my contact information for your reference. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I see that some people had some errors and couldn't hear me. So I apologize for that as I'm looking through the chat.
Oh yeah, that might be some people, because I was hearing you clearly, and it was a great talk. Right?
Thank you.
All right, so
And
please. Hello, you wanted to say something?
oh no, I was just gonna say, if people would prefer to put it in the chat, that's fine as well.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's true.
So my email is here if anybody wants to email me any questions, or if you want to follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter. It's my information is here as well. And thank you very much for having me.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Melissa, for joining us. Please, if you have any question, you can reach out to her using our social medias, or you can contact her directly on Facebook. I can see Twitter, I can see LinkedIn, so you can get to her directly from there. Okay, so without any question, thank you very much for joining. Thank you everyone for attending the first event. So I think we're having another one by 25th of September, so you don't want to miss that one. We have interesting speakers that is going to be taking us through different awesome topics, and I want to welcome you guys to that one also. Right, so I will welcome.
Yeah, just to come in there. So questions about how do I get into, we got a question about someone wants to start create a community in our university, in I think university at Akure or something. So we have two speakers coming from the University Outreach Initiative, and they are going to be talking about how to begin a GNOME community in your university, you know, and it's something that you do not want to miss. We hope that we get more university speakers, university students in for the 25th talk. We are going to send an email to everyone with an update of all the talks that we have for next week, so you don't miss that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that update. That was great. Okay, so without much saying, I think we'll call it a day here. It was an interesting one. I really learned a lot from the Genome Africa Foundation, and I hope you guys did too. Okay, so I hope to see you guys on the 25th, and thank you guys for joining.